Devin slept with a lot of guys, gentlemen. Devin has a high body count. You think I don't know that my own girlfriend has had sex with a lot of men? You think that I think I found some special snowflake who declined partying through her 20s, even though she has a great body? Give me a break, guys. You think I don't know that my own girlfriend has had sex with a lot of men? I am well aware that Devin's notch count is a lot higher than she will ever admit. I am 237% certain that I am not the biggest dick ever that Devin's ever taken, and the way I is not the best sex she's ever had. She's had bigger and better than me. She hasn't told me this, but I know. I'm almost positive Devin's had bigger, better dicks than mine. But if I ever found out what one of these guys looked like, if I ever found out that one of those guys had a 12-inch cock, you better believe I'm going to be insecure. You kidding me? I don't have a 12-inch dick. Devin's had bigger dicks than her. Now I got to see what that dick looks like. Of course it makes us insecure. That's another reason why men of value don't commit to women with high body counts. It's because we know the more cocks that have been in you, the more huge cocks that have been in you. It's just mathematical. If you've been with 5 guys, okay, all right, we can deal with that. If you've been with 555, dude, you've probably had at least 10, 12 cocks in you that are probably north of 10 inches. Guaranteed. Any man who marries a woman past the age of 23 years old, you're getting leftovers. She gave all of her best sex to the alpha cads. That's what happened. I misled my audience about Devin's age, but I did that for privacy purposes. You've been married before.
I have.
Okay, you've been married before. I mean, I guess eventually it would have come out.
Yeah, some petulant child has already doxed me, so, you know.
Yeah, right, exactly.
I, for the 20-something years before we met, as an adult, I got married young, and I was married for a very long time. For the 20-something years before we met, as an adult. For the 20-something years before we met, as an adult. For the 20-something years before we met, as an adult. For the 20-something years before we met, as an adult. For the 20-something years before we met, as an adult. For the 20-something years before we met, as an adult.
Dude, listen, man, my results speak for themselves. Black women are always saying, well, you get with fat, ugly white girls. They know damn well that's not the case, man. Black women are always saying, well, you get with fat, ugly white girls. They know damn well that's not the case, man. By the way, it's not even about the weight, guys. Devin weighs about 145 pounds, probably a little bit more, but she's very dense. She also has a lot of muscle, and she's 5'6", so she's taller than most females. So she carries her weight very well, obviously. Those of you on the TSR primetime side will see how well she carries her weight. But also, listen, she works out 3 times a week with a personal trainer and is on HGH. That's how she maintains her body. Oh, by the way, unfortunately, most chicks in this country are grossly overweight to the tune of 67%. Guys, that is 2 out of 3 women in this country that are not bangable by men of value. Dude, no wonder men of value are having a hard time finding women. And what makes their obesity really bad is that fatties are becoming even more entitled. They walk around like they're God's gift to men when actually they're really God's gift to fast food restaurants. Devin's a spoiled brat, guys. Dude, if we sit down at a restaurant and our waiter or waitress isn't there within 30 seconds, she starts to look around, right? Where are our drinks? Where are our appetizers, right? This is too cold. This is too hot. Devin, if you're listening, I love you, but you're a complainer, and you know it. I call Devin a food snob all the time. Dude, maybe I'm exaggerating and maybe I'm embellishing here for effect, but most of the time there's always something about her food that she has to complain about. Devin is a 7. She's a 7. A lot of people think, oh my God, Devin's not a 9 or a 10. She's a 7. In the face, she's a 6.5. She has a 6.5 face. She has above average looks, slightly above average looks in the face. In her face, she's a 6 on the worst day with no makeup. On her best day, her face is a 7. Her body, on the other hand, is an 8.5. Her body is an 8.5. Her body is an 8 on her worst day. On her best day, her body is a hard 9. Maybe even a little higher depending upon what she is wearing. And anybody who just take a stroll through my social media feed. Devin's got a hot bod. You guys know that.
And what's up, fam? Howdy. Welcome to episode 162 of the Redman Group, sponsored today by our special greatest hits of Donovan Sharp, Conovan, as we know him, the Sharp father, roasting himself in a way that is really spectacular. I've never seen any podcaster on YouTube or the internet make fun of himself and expose himself and roast himself that aggressively and that infamously, we can say. Now, getting into today's show, it's going to be a great show we got for you here with the facts and frauds of the Manosphere. I got with me two guests today, including DDJ, returning panelist to the show. He helped me get part one of this little series going last weekend on Sunday, special interview. And I'm also going to be joined by John Anthony from John Anthony Lifestyles. He's been on the show many times before, and he's also an epic roaster, kind of like DDJ as well, on his channel. You can check it out, John Anthony Lifestyles, and DDJ is on Miss Andrew Today on YouTube, as well as Rumble, BitChute, Odyssey, and all that. John Anthony's been doing great lately on YouTube in particular. He's been kicking ass. He's got 90,000 subs, I think, closing in on 100,000. And that's probably like triple what he had a year ago or something like that. 30,000 or so to like now 90. So he's kicking ass. And hey, both of them are good friends of mine. Great panelists in the show. Welcome back to the show, Mr. DDJ and John Anthony Lifestyles. What's up, boys?
Hey.
What's going on?
Did you guys enjoy the little intro I put together?
That was awesome.
Yeah, there was a lot of entertainment value there.
Yeah. It reminded me of the greatest hits they used to advertise, like in the 90s on TV, you know? Like greatest hits, like volume 25 or whatever the fuck.
There needs to be one of those for like every single creator because there's a lot of like I see different clips. And I'm like, oh man, I got to be saving these.
Yeah. It's I have a friend and a colleague who puts these together. It takes real effort to hunt down these little, sound bites where they just make fun of themselves because these are like 3-hour fucking streams and, over years at a time. But if you're dedicated, you can really hunt them down.
Well, it reminds me of those, the video memes that you put up there remind me of those outdoor shows like for hog hunting,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. I think everybody you could probably find that for, but there's something about Conovan, the Sharp Mama, that is just so spectacular. There's like this element of hyperbole he uses, but then it's also real. Like he's actually stating real things about his life and his wife or whatever and all this crap. And he calls her very dense and fat and a food snob. And like talking about your girlfriend and your wife that way is it's really unusual too. Like you don't ever I've shown that to some girls, some wives and shit of my friends and the speakers, and they're the wives in particular, like their eyes go wide. They can't believe that this dude is talking about his wife this way. I love it though. Donovan's one of my favorite frauds. Like people think I hate him, and I kind of do because he's a fraud and a parasite, but I kind of love like what a loser he is because he's so he's like a lovable loser, like a Fat Albert kind of thing going on. Anyway, this episode I wanted to talk more specifically about the frauds. Like last episode, DDJ and I did about this. We covered more of like the history of the Manosphere and the different movements within it, and there's like the tribes and stuff. But we didn't talk too much about like specifics for this fraud and that fraud, naming names and going into details about why they're a fraud and what the real history of that is and what the lies they've told are and the different deceptions and shit like that. There's a lot to cover. There's no way to cover this even in one episode, even if it's 2 hours long or something. But I think we can get into the weeds of like what the top 10 are or something like that. So, John, I want to start with you. Who are kind of your top 3 frauds that you go after? And I know you go after some too that I'm not familiar with, or as much anyway, like Derek Moneyberg and those kind of pieces of shit, who are more like money scammers than like game scammers. But who are some of the top 3 that are the most, the biggest pieces of shit in your opinion in the Manosphere?
RSD Tyler, I think, wins that award in the pickup world. Just in the general Manosphere, Rollo Tomasi.
Oh, okay, yeah, well put.
Your top 3. To pick that final third spot, Probably Fresh and Fit, I guess.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, we got the frauds in the hood right here. Pull them up good. Simps in the hood. Yeah, so talk to me about RSD Tyler. Owen Cook is his real name. I know him. I've known him too. I met him briefly many years ago, back in like 2010. He was really weird. Kind of weirded me out when we briefly met. But I've watched him too from the old days, and I used to like him too. Like I want to disclose that when he used to write his Blogspot, I forget what it was exactly called, but it was a blog he wrote. You know, I was young. I was like 18, 19. I was enraptured by the writings he would put out and stuff, and some of his old video courses too. What was it? The not the free tour stuff you see on YouTube, but the old stuff like transformations and like blueprint foundations. Exactly. Yeah, all that old shit. But when you're a kid, you don't know any better too. You know, it reminds me of these Fresh and Fit kids who are like simps for these frauds. They just don't know any better. They're 18, 19, 20 years old. I've seen kids as young as like 14 years old posting on Reddit how they're fans of Fresh and Fit. And like, I want to be like Fresh too. And it's like, yeah, the fat one. And I'm like, dude, like this is so fucked. It really puts things in perspective. The people I used to like when I was young, and like they're just fucking losers. Owen Cook is a really perfect example of that.
Well, that just kind of really defines how isolated, how desperate, and how devoid a lot of these young men are of positive male role models or strong masculine role models. And so, you know, when you basically say, "Hey, I got an idea," you know, I really aspire to be Donovan Sharp's hemorrhoid. You know, that's a problem. So.
Yeah. That's what they are too. Like I was talking to John Anthony last night, you know, just over text, and I've been thinking more about conceptually like why certain, and it's not just a manosphere, it goes way beyond that, right? But beyond the fraud father rollery, beyond Owen Cook, Jordan Peterson, for example, is someone who I don't think he's like he's not really a manosphere fraud, even though some of what he talks about would be like a manosphere kind of issue or topic set. But I think he's an intellectual fraud. And if you actually look at what he says, he openly admits this to a degree. He talks about how he struggles. His number one struggle, I'm serious, I have this on video and I'm going to do a larger video on it, is he struggles with just basically telling the truth. Which for a public intellectual whose entire job is to tell the truth about various issues with psychology and philosophy and whatever, that to me is like really alarming. That he's so brazen and struggles with that. And he's almost 60 years old, right? He's not like some 25-year-old hotshot trying to make it on YouTube or something. This guy is like he's a grandfather, literally. And he struggles with telling the truth. And his entire job is to tell the fucking truth. Whether he was a professor up in Canada or now a public intellectual, a philosopher, he's literally a clinical psychologist. Like that to me is alarming. And he says it just plain as day. And you could give him points almost for the honesty, but it's like honesty about being dishonest. So it's this fucking head trip. And then he has this huge gaggle of simps that suck up to him, these little hemorrhoids, exactly like the Fresh and Fit simps, exactly like the Rolla simps. These guys are like not just hoodwinked, they use these guys as like digital dads, like digital daddies, exactly like DDJ just said, that they lack father figures in their life and any kind of role model.
Well, and because they lack any kind of belief system, you know, they use these people as secular saints. I mean, you really want to get some, wind up some people that are true have cult-like conditioning. Go after Tesla, go after Elon Musk and basically tell people how Tesla couldn't have made money without all the corporate welfare he received from the government. And you'll watch these guys come out of the woodwork and they will just come after you. I mean, the entertainment value is great because they can't process it. The cognitive dissonance won't allow them to do it. And you see this, like you said, you see this with Jordan Peterson. You see this with Rollo Tomassi. I've seen it in the MGTOW community, because, the idea here is that we're supposed to be able to have, open intellectual dialogue about things that matter to men. And while we may not always necessarily be right, or we may not be right in all situations, one of those things that we have to be really focused on is, intellectual integrity and intellectual honesty when it comes to the way we communicate, because we have this platform that we speak from. And if we're not doing that, then, we degenerate into shills, and we're basically setting men up for failure rather than for success.
Yeah, so with RSD Tyler, I mean, you can go back to the book The Game. The way he's described in the book The Game by Neil Strauss, I think was a very accurate depiction. Right? I haven't read the book in a long time, but I've read it multiple times in my life.
I agree.
And I remember thinking like, damn, this guy's a huge piece of shit. Yep. But then later, like he did all this like damage control. Oh, that was all sensationalism. It's all inaccurate, blah, blah, blah. And I gave him the benefit of the doubt. But then by being around him in person and talk to people that hang out with him and then seeing the whole elaborate thing they built up, it was dead on accurate, right? He is a massive piece of shit. He is behind the scenes, like he's big fans of all these like big internet marketers. Like he's studied like all the guys on how to sell from the stage, how to get people to have to go buy and the product lines at the back and sell stuff.
The Ty Lopez shit.
Yeah, and he hangs out with all those guys too. He hangs out with Ty Lopez. He hangs out. He goes on Fresh and Fit. He was on the episode of Fresh and Fit and Rolo. All these guys hang out together. And what's interesting is they now have over 70 products. I did a video on my channel when they had about 67 about a month ago, but they've released more. Mm-hmm. And the very idea of needing 70 products per game, and I'm very connected into their clients because they were the most popular company for the past 10 years. So I've heard horror stories, on a weekly basis at a minimum, but in some periods, multiple per day, of guys they're just being put on a hamster wheel. There's no correlation to how much time and effort and money they're putting into this RSD teaching and how good they're getting a pickup. It goes in the other direction because they teach them to be like these weird gamey, kind of like dancing monkeys and stuff like that. And they're not training out guys that are good. They're not fixing the problem. But I think that's precisely the point. There can be no other explanation. It's not that they're just so confused about the topic that they're just trying to get it right and have failed 70 times. No, he's studying the art of selling. The way that they built their company is very similar to a cult. Mm-hmm. And I interviewed Ross Jeffries, who was, the official godfather of the Manosphere, I guess. And
the seduction community for sure.
Production community, yeah. And he was. I was like, "What's your thoughts on RSD?" He's like, "Oh, they're just a cult." He's like, they teach people to just get in line behind Owen Cook, and that's where it becomes like very dangerous because everyone's just taking what this man says to be dogmatically correct, and he's like kind of built himself up and glorified himself, much like they do in religion and stuff like that. And there's guys that think like Owen Cook has like a 5,000 late count, and stuff like that. And I remember when I lived with Manhor, he was a 21 speaker. I remember way back in the day, but I lived with him in Vegas in 2013, and he was close friends with Owen and close friends with other guys in RSD. And he's like, Owen's not even at 50 late count. He's like, that's one of RSD's best kept secrets. And I was like, dude, that makes total sense because I've seen him in field and he just gets destroyed. I've seen. I
want to back this up, but I've also talked to a lot of instructors. I know a lot of the old instructors because they spoke at 21 back in the day. I'm not going to name exactly who it was, but I can tell you publicly that Brad Branson was an RSC instructor, and he spoke at 21 a couple of times. Natural Tim spoke at 21. Manhor spoke at 21. Nathan spoke at 21. Alexander, Alex Social, he spoke at 21. Yeah. Dude, I've talked to all these guys in private, and I'm not going to tell you which ones gave me dirt on Owen. Some did, some didn't. But I can tell you that more than one of them confirmed this 50 lay count shit. They would see him literally lie. They'd go out with him at night with the students or whatever back in 2012, 2015, whatever it was the fuck back in the day. And they would see him get blown up by these girls. And he would go on stage the next morning with them on the stage. And he would tell them fake stories about how he banged these girls.
I witnessed that personally. Where he would go home alone. And then the next day he'd have this full concocted story. Let me tell like an abbreviated version of one of these real quick. So I took a boot camp with them like a retard in June 2012. I had just hit 100 late count. I was at literally 103 late count. I remember this very specifically. And I didn't know much about RSD at all, but I was on their newsletter somehow. And I got a email that was like, oh, there's a boot camp coming to Philadelphia and there's limited spots. And I was like, oh, he was from the book The Game. And, he sounded kind of shady, but he's backed all that out. And he said, no, that's all BS. And so I ended up calling them and they convinced me to take like one of the final spots. And on the program, I just saw him get relentlessly destroyed. Like it was like a massacre. Like the girls were just blowing him out very quickly. And this was fascinating to me because I just assumed this guy must be one of the best in the world based on the fact that he was in The Game and all this stuff, the book The Game. And I would go up to girls and say, hey, what do you think of that guy? And the typical responses were weird, creepy, gay, cringe, like, get him out of here. And I was like, wow, this is fucking fascinating. But, to the point of the story is on on the final day of the program, he brought me up in the front of the room. He's like, this guy's totally destroyed on boot camp. He's like, he's ran like perfect nights. And he started telling a story how he had been at like Ruth Chris Steakhouse in Philadelphia. There's a whole crowd in front of him, right? And he's like, yeah, I met this girl when I was just getting steak, and she's like top 3 hottest girls I've ever met in the game. And I was thinking like, oh my God, like if this guy's met, you know, countless girls in the game, and this was one of the top 3, first of all, he's able to get like 10 level girls, but it didn't really jive with what I had seen whatsoever. And I had caught him lying a whole bunch about various stuff already. And so he said this girl was top 3 hottest girls he's ever seen in the game. And he was sitting right next to me, and he was like, I'm going to try to get her to hang out because I'm flying back to LA tomorrow. And he's texting with her, and it was one of this was back in 2012, but whatever phone he had, I could see her number at the top, and I memorized it. And I took it as a personal challenge. If he didn't get the girl, like I wasn't going to go behind his back, but if he didn't get the girl, I was going to go after her after he went back to LA. So he called her in front of the whole free tour, in front of the whole crowd. And he was trying to get her to come over, and she was rejecting him openly. And he's like, oh, like I'll get her later. And I texted Todd the next day. I'm like, did Owen ever hook up with that girl? And he's like, no, she wouldn't meet up with him. And I had saved the number off. So I texted the girl. I'm like, hey, I'm friends with Owen. I didn't tell Owen I was doing this. I was like, hey, I'm friends with Owen. I'm new to Philly, blah, blah, blah. Start flirting with her, get on a phone call with her. We're flirting more. I got her to send pictures, not even a 6. Like very, very, very average, like busted, like gaps in her teeth. I was like, oh, there's no way I'd ever meet this girl.
Worse than Donovan's wife or better than Donovan's
wife?
Yeah,
worse.
Oh, wow, that's really bad.
No, that's a toss up. She was definitely, it might not even have been a 5 something. She was just like busted.
Okay.
And I was just like, what the fuck? And then I went to teach, because I started assisting some of their programs for a few months. And I went to teach in New York. I was assisting Jeffy. And he's like, hey, Owen told me how you got that number off his phone and blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, well, I was just doing that as a challenge, and he already had flown back to LA. He's like, you better not point that shit here. I'm like, yeah, it's all good. And I went and approached Owen to apologize and like explain the situation. And he played dumb. And he's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And I was like, I'm like, wait, what? And he's like, I didn't know that you took the number. So he's like lying straight to my face. I'm like, Jeff just told me about it. But Manhor said that he had caught Owen in like over 100 lies, that he's just like a pathological liar.
Yeah.
That he's just constantly lying about everything. And then these full fabricated stories about like, oh, I did this and this and this, even though he went home alone. And he's been carrying that on for like 10, 15 years. Like what he reports, like the facade that he reports is literally that. He's just built up this massive facade for the cult to all like worship him as this like legendary game character. But the sad reality is he sucks at game. Girls are very repulsed by him. And by the way, he's just using internet marketing tactics to extract as much money as possible while pretending to be on these guys' side. So he's like, I see him as like one of the worst, probably the number one, because he's like a wolf in sheep's clothing. All these guys, and he was the most popular figure for the longest time in the community. Yeah. And he's still running boot camps. He's still running.
They're rebranded now. That is something new.
Yeah, they have a new company called Self Mastery Company or whatever. They deleted all the art.
Powerful communication or some bullshit.
Yeah, high status communication, and now they just put out a new one, high vibe communication. It's all woo-woo nonsense. Julian's doing transformation mastery. Jeffy's doing charisma mastery. You know, they're going to a broader self-help audience because they already kind of, put all the rest of that.
Basically, what you're saying is that they're life coaches for men. And for those people who don't know, my particular attitude toward life coaches is that life coaches are usually failed divorced women with no job skills. And so they become these life coaches because they can't even meet the low bar of going and getting a psychology or a sociology degree to become a counselor, right? So they're basically like unlicensed counselors. And I think that the thing that's really sad about this whole scenario is that, as men, we go get jobs, we go to work, we sometimes lose track of our friends. And then, you see some of these guys who they're making decent money or whatever, and they want to go and they want to learn how to be more successful with women. And because they're somewhat socially isolated, they're vulnerable to these cult conditioning tactics, which is what you guys are talking about here. And And that's what ends up happening. And so you see this. And I mean, I used to see this like back in the day. I'm a little bit older than both you guys. I used to see this stuff with the multi-level marketing people, the like the pyramid scammers, like,
Yep.
And you would see this all the time. And they would use these whole fake relationships. They would create these relationships with their customers. And they were these one-sided sycophantic relationships. And that's how they would use the cult condition. Oh, you're great. You're this, you're whatever. And they love bomb just the way narcissistic women love bomb men, obviously minus the sexuality, I hope. And so, and it ends up being like this big, huge, cult conditioning specifically for profit, because the only thing they're trying to do is separate you from your money.
And they've demonized results. That's another big thing I take issue with. Like my sole mission in helping guys this is to get them as complete of a solution as quickly as possible. And that's not necessarily like a good business model. I think it's good for reputation. Like we just put together a whole testimonial page I was showing you, Anthony, where there's like just endless, like hundreds and hundreds of testimonials. But very often after I train a guy, like in my 2-month mentorship, like he's like set, like he's crushing it. He doesn't need any more help. But Tyler is like, he's telling you just trust the process, and you have all these guys going for years with literally nothing to show for it. And they make out anyone that cares about getting the result that they want in game as being like a weirdo, right? It's basically like when religion is like blessed are the poor and the weak, and it's kind of like all backwards. They do the same thing here, where like they framed me out over the years as like this weird guy that cares about banging hot chicks, and you shouldn't be like that. That's unhealthy. You should just trust the process. So like when I call guys out, like, hey, I've been training with RSD for 3 years, I haven't gotten laid, but they say that I'm improving. I'm like, dude, that's a vacuous statement. You haven't achieved the results you want. If you went to a personal trainer and you made no progress in 3 years, you wouldn't accept this trust the process thing. But that flies in the self-help space because people think that they're like progressing on some level, even though they're not getting any kind of tangible results. And I almost, I would say like 80-90% of the clients I've gotten over the past 10 years are guys that went down the RSD road and failed. Yeah. And I like have come through in the wake of the wreckage. And these guys are all skeptical. A lot of them have given up, but all these different coaches have promised them a fix or a solution and chewed them up and spit them out. But the sad thing is they keep going back to those coaches because
that's what I want to talk about. Hang on a second. So I don't really like Philion. He's done hit videos on me.
Yeah, I don't like him either.
Yeah,
I just hit Jay Waller, which was hilarious.
Who?
This new guy on the scene, Jay Waller, who hangs out with Rolo and Robert Kiyosaki.
Oh, so he's a fraud. Okay, yeah.
He hangs out with the Tates though as well.
Yeah, the Tates are kind of like I've called Cobra Tate like a warlord of the Manosphere, and while that's funny, I also mean it because he'll sell like weapons to both sides, so to speak. And I don't mind that because I've always seen him as that. So it's like a shark being a shark. But anyway, what I wanted to focus on here is I don't like Philion. I think he's a douchebag in a beta for sure, 99% of the time. But I thought this was a decent video on Tony Robbins lately. He's put out 4 days ago. It's worth watching how Tony Robbins uses a lot of the tactics that we're talking about and has been doing so since the 80s, like a long
Yeah, and Tyler copied him.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because Tony Robbins just interviewed with Tucker Carlson on Tucker Carlson Today.
Okay.
And he admits it. He admits it. He openly admits it. He basically says, look, he goes, I wanted to learn how to market self-help to people. And he said, so I learned neuro-linguistic programming. Mm-hmm. And that's the technique I use to sell people all this stuff. And that's how I made my name. I mean, if you listen to it, he's not basically saying he's a fraud or anything, but he's basically saying, look, I'm able to manipulate these people in the way that I want to sell the things that I want to sell. In fact, he's such a good influencer of people's behaviors and attitudes that's why he's got all these rich people contacting him and things like that. But I think that the issue that you have is that a lot of these people, they don't want to help men. They want to personally enrich themselves. And they see people like Tony Robbins get rich off doing the same things that they want to do. And they're like, yeah, this is great. When the reality is that half of these men, if they had strong male friendships, if they had strong male connections in their own personal families, if they were involved a little bit in their community, they wouldn't need most of this stuff. And then they can go to people who are experts to kind of teach them the advanced stuff that maybe they wouldn't have gotten from their friends or family.
Well, I want to focus on something here that you're bringing up as Tony Robbins, for example, has been succeeding in some respect as a fraud or whatever for a long time. The issue that Philion brought up that I thought is pretty good is that, and we've seen this with Fresh and Fit, Spencer Cornelia called this out really well in a couple of his videos about fake and fraud, Fresh and Fit. Basically, the more time that goes by and you succeed, even by incident or accident or whatever, is conning like the lowest of the low, the dregs of society, the dumbest motherfuckers, the room temperature IQs of the Manosphere or whatever, you gain a level of credibility from being a fraud. Kind of like a Bernie Madoff you would see outside of the Manosphere in the financial industry back in the 2000s. Yep. Even though he was a fraud the whole time, the more he succeeded at being a fraud, you gain a credibility from being a fraud that appears, it's the illusion of legitimacy. And it doesn't make you legitimate. It just means you're a legitimate fraud and you're good at being a fraud and a con man and a bullshitter. Jordan Peterson's the same thing. So it's like this vicious feedback loop that they build. And the only people it ropes in are the people ultimately that DDJ is talking about, which is a lot of society now because they're raised by single moms and all this crap. I think Fresh and Fit, Fake and Fraud in particular, have roped in a lot of young black men because young black men in America have a much higher percentage of single moms, which creates either, these broken, unhinged alphas that don't have a dad or mom's boys. That's what single moms raise every time. 99% of the time, the kid is unhinged alpha or a broken fucking mama's boy, like Donovan, which is why Donovan's still a fucked up con artist. One more thing that DDJ needs to harp on. John Anthony mentioned how these guys are pathological liars, and that reminded me of DDJ saying last week on the show that liars always lie. And I love that saying because you're right. They lie 99% of the time, and they're all compulsive, pathological about it. Anyway, I'll shut up.
Well, no problem. And I was going to say too, as far as the African American community is concerned, the real tragedy is that the super high levels of insecurity and the fact that they don't have any real conflict resolution skills, and that isn't a racial thing. That's a nurtured thing. That's because they don't have any positive male role models, so they resort to violence a lot faster. But more importantly, when you look at the homosexual community, the largest demographic in the homosexual community are black men. So that tells you a lot of what you need to know about the insecurity and how comfortable they are around women and kind of how comfortable they are in their skills in navigating those romantic relationships.
I just think it's amazing that Donovan is also so many of these. Yeah, he's a huge racist, but he's not racist against white people. He's racist against black people. That's what's interesting. He's like white liberals who hate white people. Donovan is like this black liberal who hates other black people. And he openly, not only black women, but other black men, he fights with the black manosphere all the fucking time because they know that he hates black people, especially black women, but I think black men as well. He's this giant, like, racist retard.
Well, there's a lot of positive voices in the black manosphere, and they're basically telling people to be self-reliant, and they're giving strength to their audience, and that offends Donovan because again, he can't practice cult conditioning with people telling him to go fuck himself.
Yeah, exactly. Now, another thing I wanted to mention from the Philion stuff, though, again, I think it's a decent video. Philion's a douchebag for sure, but that doesn't mean broken clock's right twice a day or whatever, right? So look, what his video got me thinking about. There's a bunch of cognitive fallacies that these sims fall for, right? One of them would be like sunk cost fallacy, which is kind of like a gambler's thing. You dump in all this money, right? And you just keep going and going and going. This is how they get gamblers. They get these people hooked on this shit. And if you dump 400 hours listening, like I did, maybe not 400, but listening to RSD Tyler back in the day and Foundations and all these programs, or you sit there for 5 hours at a time listening to the Fraud Father now currently talk about hypergamy, every fucking day for 5 hours at a time. This is conditioning, number one, to condition your brain to, continue believing this shit. But also you're really investing a tangible amount of time, a huge amount of time, hundreds of hours listening to these retards talk about this shit. And then money on top of that. It might just be $5 a month on Patreon, but over months and years, this racks up to be a meaningful amount of money.
There's like a correlation to like the insulation you're building around yourself from a cognitive dissonance perspective. Yeah. Because when anyone challenges this guy, first of all, it's like not even a consideration to admit that everything you've been following is wrong, right?
Yeah.
And then
me and you challenge their investment, their tangible investment of time and money, and that's what makes them. It's even worse now. They don't want to admit they're wrong in the first place.
They're also conditioned that when anyone doubts them, to like Rollo has conditioned everyone. Anyone that doubts me is a blue-pilled beta simp, no one wants to be a blue pill beta simp. So
Or purple
don't
pill
roll
too. Purple pill.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
he's clever
they all do
about
that.
gatekeeping. You know, purple pill, blue pill, whatever. They have he's been doing that for years. He cuts them out of his little circle of influence, his religion, basically, that he's built.
Well, and that just so we're clear, let's be honest. That is absolute blue pill cult behavior, because the reality is that if you're a Manosphere voice, like, you know, I consider myself a Manosphere voice. I want the men that listen to me or follow my content, I want them to be resilient. I want them to be self-sufficient. I want them to be, you know, strong psychologically and emotionally. And that means that if someone disagrees with me and they disagree with me on the issue, let's have a conversation about it. But if all you're doing is concern trolling, or you're sitting here and you're basically just being disparaging with ad hom and character assassination attacks and nothing else, right? Now I know you're full of shit. Now I know that basically you have some kind of ulterior motive to the disagreement.
Yeah,
and I think that
fundamentally, no one should be afraid to defend their positions publicly.
Absolutely. And the reality is, and you know, it's kind of funny, you know, John, you made this comment about how, you know, maybe it's not a really good business model, but I teach these guys to do whatever, and then they go off or they don't come back. Well, the reality is that, you know, in the practice of law, I work in the legal field. In the practice of law, I tell people, you know, we want to get you to a point where we don't have to talk again, because nobody wants to be
and that's when you know someone's on your side. Like, I had a personal trainer once that said that he's like, if I don't get you to your goals and like we're not making steady progress, then I've failed my job, and you know that I've failed as a coach. And I was like, yeah, that's what I tell my clients too. Like, that's how everyone should fucking talk.
Right. But there's people in every one of these little tribes, including the MGTOW community, who basically tell their listeners, look, you got to come back next week, because if you don't, you know, you're not going to get your dose of red pill, and then you're going to slide back to the blue pill, whatever. Right. When the reality is that whether you consider yourself PUA or just general red pill or MGTOW or whatever, that should only be a single aspect of your personal identity. If you frame your whole identity around being a PUA, unless you're a professional coach or something like that, or you frame your whole identity around being MGTOW, or you frame your whole identity around, being a Rolo follower, you've missed the boat, and you're not an independent thinker. You're an NPC. You're a Manosphere NPC. And this is why I talk about the red pill blind spot, is that you have to basically trust but verify, but you have to trust but verify within the Manosphere, as well as the general community in which you inhabit, in which we all inhabit. And that's why I also go out of my way time and time again to say, look, don't socially isolate. Don't sit at home and, and if you live in your mom's basement, move out. Make sure you have a job, make sure you've got social connections, make sure that you have, people you can talk to and places you can go, because those things naturally inoculate you from this cult-like conditioning bullshit that happens across the Manosphere. And the more that we can help men, the better everything is going to be, whether, no matter what walk of life we work with.
Yeah, I'm just showing this meme here. I thought was pretty great. These little pigs or whatever falling off the cliff. Rational male saves lives.
Perfect.
Facts, bro. Facts. Yeah, so I wanted to talk a little bit more about the Philion video. One more point he made in it that was really good, and it got me thinking about it. He talked about cognitive dissonance theory, which is a big part of what we see with these, in particular, not just fraud in general, but the simp like armies. And they're different, right? Rolo has his own little simp army. Fresh and Fit has their own little simp army. Jordan Peterson, Owen Cook. And this is not normal, right? This is weird behavior. So it got me thinking about sunk cost fallacy as well, in terms like quantitatively, time, money they invest. The more they invest, the more they don't want to admit they're wrong, and they don't want to admit they're wrong in the first place, right? It's like basic human psychology. Like, people are more likely to rationalize that, admit that they were wrong, and turn course on an issue. Most people just don't have the emotional and cognitive maturity to do that, especially these 18-year-old kids that are lost and fatherless and shit. But also there's a qualitative element to it as well, I think. And this is what, John, you've been talking about, that's had me thinking about it as well. Basically, not only do they want these guys not leaving, so they stay and keep giving more money, and they share more videos and share more books and leave reviews. There's a lot of different mechanisms they actually use these guys for to make them money. It's not just direct money. It's how can they leverage their audience through manipulating them to do more stuff for them, to be little bitches, little NPCs, like DDJ said. But anyway, the fact that they're wrong is part of why they develop this cult following. right? This is what Philion's video got me thinking about. It's the fact that they're wrong is what actually drives this. If they were giving reality-based information and facts and evidence and things that actually worked and actually moved the needle on someone's life, not only would that guy leave, they wouldn't stick around to rationalize why this ridiculous bullshit is true when it's not true. So, and he cites a cult where in the 1950s where it was like the end of the world was coming, and then it didn't happen, right? And then there was this big meeting when it was about to happen, like fucking hundreds of them showed up. And you would think, well, okay, the world didn't end. Clearly this person's wrong. I'm going to get the fuck out of here. But they all fucking stayed in this cult and they just rationalized why it didn't happen. So in the Manosphere, it's kind of the same thing. It's the fact, I think, that it doesn't work, that it's so retarded and so wrong that hooks these guys in. And they just want to do mental gymnastics for why.
And they frame it as being like a really hard problem. Like someone told me they researched a lot about cigarette smoking, and that it's actually not that hard to quit. I don't. This is just what my friend said after a lot of research. He said it's actually not that hard to quit, but the whole marketing of it being like super hard is what keeps people hooked. So like, you know, like I know RSD like started selling boot camps in packs of 4, right? Like, I never need to teach a guy more than 1 boot camp. Sometimes they come to like take it to a very advanced level or to learn threesome pickup and stuff like that. But they're literally selling these guys boot camps in packs of 4. And then by the end of that 4, they're like, okay, like we made a little bit of progress. We still have a lot more work to go. And they frame it as being this giant problem that's going to take years to solve and that they're the only solution for. Yeah. So, and then I speak to guys that have taken 3 packs of 4, like 12 boot camps. And they're like, dude, I don't know what to do in a nightclub. And I'm like, what was going on in those programs? It's just like abstract, theoretical kind of feel-good nonsense that doesn't translate in any practical strategy. But if you took like one of my programs that fixed the problem in a very serious way versus like 12 nonsensical programs, that those 12 nonsensical programs are building investment, like to your point, it's making the guy invest. And, you know, he's not going to want to give up then because he thinks that he's making some kind of real progress along the journey because they've framed it that way. They framed it as a big problem.
It's like Derek Moneyberg. The point is that it doesn't work. It has to not work to keep you coming back to buy more shit that also doesn't work. And the goal is to just get you to buy as much bullshit for as long as possible before you burn out and go somewhere else.
Well, and what these guys are doing is they're teaching these men to become lemmings. And really that's a really dangerous path to go on. And I'm going to say something here that's going to be real unpopular. Is that when you teach men to become dependent and you teach these men to give up their ability to make good decisions for themselves, eventually they get to a point in their life where basically what you're doing is you're creating psychological problems in these men's lives. You're creating insecurity, you're creating depression, you're creating cognitive dissonance. And eventually these men will either kill themselves or they'll kill the other people around them because they'll lash out because they can't.
Or they just have a miserable existence. And I hear these stories. I've heard like thousands and thousands of these stories. That's in part why, like we have a section on my channel about videos, and I have like 115 now. And people are like, oh, he's just hating. He's just clout chasing. In reality, I talk to so many guys that are just totally miserable because of these other content creators, and it's all at their own expense. It's all it's like they're a slave to these content creators who are just taking their time and their energy and their money, and they're giving them nothing back. They're making their life much worse. They're indoctrinating them into all this bullshit, so they just keep paying them and paying them and paying them to get this short-term relief. But nothing ever comes better in their life. And in a lot of cases, they're pushed, you know, in the wrong direction. A lot of these guys that train in these other companies, they're harder to help afterwards than guys that are just like a blank slate.
Right. Well, and I saw that a lot. And I saw that a lot in the MGTOW community, because if you look at the original MGTOW manifesto, the original MGTOW manifesto is support masculine men, support feminine women, and support limited government, right? Well, from about 2015 forward, there was a whole group of MGTOW content creators who only supported walking away from women. And anytime you brought up the MGTOW manifesto, they would attack you. And that leads me to another point. When you speak to a person that you disagree with on any philosophical subject, and that person, when you express that disagreement in a respectful way, and that person gets angry, there's something wrong with that individual. And, you know, and I'm not talking about value judgments. I'm not talking about, you know, the difference. Like if a Christian talking to a homosexual about how homosexuality is a sin, of course, the homosexual is going to be offended, right? That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about in a scenario where, you know, you're discussing some intellectual aspect of the manosphere or some element of the red pill, like a red pill truth, right? And then that person gets upset at you. That tells you there's something wrong with that individual, because if the first thing they do is resort to being angry, they're typically not there to help men. What they're there to do is they're there to make money, and they're there to make money off of the men. And I saw this in the MGTOW community a lot, where the MGTOW guys, a lot of them, there was a lot of infighting, but part of the reason is because most of these men did not express healthy masculinity, and they had no ability to manage conflict. They couldn't sit there and disagree on something and then maybe have it degenerate into a bunch of F-bombs, fuck you too, and then turn around, bring it back around, have a common ground, meeting of the minds, and maybe either agree to disagree or go, okay, maybe I was wrong on this, and move on. Because the reality is, you know, it's like what Muhammad Ali said. If you're the same man at 50 that you were at 20, you wasted 30 years of your life. And the only way we're successful in life is by making some of these mistakes and learning from those mistakes, and then making different mistakes until we learn how to succeed. And that's the problem that you have in, you know, like in Rollo Tomasi's community, for example, where he does the life coaching, and a lot of these guys who do this type of life coaching who run in that crowd. But it's the same problem that happens in the MGTOW community.
You mean unlicensed counseling? It's probably illegal.
It is. It's absolutely illegal. And there's a reason that there are laws against it. It's because unlicensed counseling harms more men than helps them, right? And the other side of it is that you're not talking about the higher intellectual elements of the manosphere. Like if you look at the manosphere back in 2008, 2010, 2012, there were a lot of guys who spoke out, who were highly intellectual, and maybe they were, you know, crass in their delivery, but they thought about this stuff, they considered it, and they understood it. Whereas today, most of the people who speak out a lot about the stuff about the manosphere, they're talking about 101 level stuff, like you said, oh, my hypergamy, you know,
Yeah.
or you know, these women are thoughts, or NAWALT and all that. Like these are super basic concepts, and frankly, if your content is doing the same thing today that it's doing back then maybe, you know, you don't have the comprehension that you think you do. And that's really the big challenge here, is that, again, it's about managing the conflict and learning something new. And
Well, they have no comprehension of anything tangible. It's all bullshit stacked on top of bullshit, stacked on top of bullshit, stacked on top of plagiarism. I mean, it's like 10 levels of deception, fraud, plagiarism, theft, and just rampant keyboard jockeying, theory jockeying. Rollo in particular is even worse than Owen Cook. At least Owen Cook would go out and get blown out by women. Rollo hasn't had a same LA in 30 fucking years. Like this shit is beyond. And it's insane. He talks to 18-year-old kids about trying to get spinning plates. Like, you haven't spun plates since Bill Clinton was getting blowjobs, man. Or I mean, in the White House.
Well,
Like,
I mean, to be a devil's advocate here, right? To take an opposite position, we don't know if he's like, you know, undercover in the gay community, and maybe that's what he's talking about. We just don't know.
I've heard he's getting divorced and he's cheating on his wife or something, but I don't. Maybe he's in the closet. I don't know. Nothing would surprise me with this guy. I mean, he's so sick and so twisted in the head. You know, there's someone we're missing though that I think we need to focus on, and he's one of the, in my opinion, he's maybe not the biggest fraud. There's much Owen Cook, the fraud father, Fresh and Fit, the Shark father. There's a lot of frauds, but I think probably the most extreme fraud is the child stalker, Jonathan Pigwood. This guy has confessed and tried to take ownership for stalking children in public and taking pictures of little kids. This shit gets really sick. It gets worse. I mean, we have a whole bunch of these. Let's see if we can get into them. So there's all kinds of photos if you go on his Instagram, maybe like a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. And he was just constantly stalking children in public places, schools, in the public, walking around. He would say there's videos where he says these kids are so cute. They're so cute. It's really weird stuff. And there's a lot of it. And he's even tried making excuses for it. Like, oh, that was in a school. Like, this is him here. He's always taking these little creepy pictures of kids. He doesn't know these children. He does it in Disneyland or something in Tokyo. He does it in subways. This one here. Look at this fucking photo. Like, why are you taking a picture of a 3-year-old kid in public that you don't know, and this is without obviously the knowledge of the parents.
I'm
There's
posting
no,
it.
and then posting it, and then talking about it, and trying to make excuses for it. And this is someone that is army of cute kids. I mean, this is borderline. This looks like pedo stuff in slow motion. Like I don't know if he's actually molested any children yet, but this looks like it's on a very clear path to pedophilia and child molestation. And this guy is propped up by the Fraud Father, by Fresh and Fit, by Conovan, by Richard Cooper, by even John Samez. I mean, this shit is the sickest shit I have ever seen in the manosphere. It's a step above and beyond significantly than any of the commercial fraud and the cult behavior and stuff like that, which is really bad. I mean, I don't want to downplay that stuff. And so this involves a bunch of kids now. And this is supposed to be a dating coach? Are you fucking kidding me? Like, you're like a pedo coach.
Well, my input here is I have no official comment currently because I'm suing. There's an active lawsuit in the U.S. and in Japan against this guy that I filed. So I've been advised not to make any public comments.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'll make some public comments about it. All right. Because
she is so cute. What the fuck is going on here?
Right. So here's the thing. There are a lot of guys in the manosphere who are promoting, and I see this in some of the like what passes for the MGTOW community as well, where people are saying things that just make no sense or they're completely degenerate. And so, for instance, like, there was a content creator who I won't currently name, who I used to associate with, who used to promote trannies in his Discord and homosexuals in his Discord. And that's your lifestyle, that's fine. But what these guys were doing is these homosexuals and trannies, they were going to the Discord and they were preying on MGTOW men. And then they were posting child porn in the Discord. And when these things were called out, obviously I was the bad guy for saying, hey, maybe this is wrong, right? And so you have these people and they're getting together and they're forming these groups and these communities, and they're forming these online communities specifically to promote this child abuse. And what people don't understand is that, while we kind of say, okay, this is an innuendo issue, the concern is that if there's a huge pandemic right now of people who are isolated, who are sharing child porn and things like that. And you have these people who are doing this specifically to use as grooming tools for children. So they're basically they're child abuser wannabes. And this is kind of like the gateway to do that. And, when they post these pictures, even though they seem innocuous, these are grooming techniques, but it's also they're dog whistles for other child abusers and pedophiles to say, look, I'm a safe person. You can talk about this degenerate shit with me. And that's really a huge issue, because there's a lot, like I said, there's a lot of guys out there that are isolated and they do these different things. And then you have content creators that are selling sex toys. You have content creators that are promoting organizations that promote pedophilia and pedophilia support groups and things like that. And it's a very slippery slope, and it happens very, very quickly. And then all of a sudden, everybody's like, well, we need a virtue signal on behalf of child grooming, child sex grooming, when really all those people just need to go out and be put out in a field, and their family line needs to be just ended right there, because there's no other solution.
This is grooming behavior, is it not? I
mean, well,
it looks like it's stalking, at least.
It's grooming behavior in that what he's doing is he's sending coded messages to other child abusers. Okay. So he's not actually grooming the kid per se, but what he could do is he could theoretically use these pictures and go, oh yeah, I take pictures of kids all the time. It's okay. Right. And use it. I mean, it's like that old school, like the sex predator that's, oh, I'm a photographer. And he tries to get close to the chick as a photographer when really he just wants to force himself on her. It's the same sort of thing, just with child abuse and pedophilia.
I mean, that is what I see here too, man. And this is it's so sick, because I don't know. I mean, number one, it's a sick objectively and I think universally, but I don't know of a single other manosphere fraud who takes it to the level of stalking children in public.
Well, and
that's why it's so, and no one calls it out. They all support him. It's sick.
Well, and let me kind of take it a step further. Okay. I'm not just saying this because this is my personal opinion. I'm saying this as a family law professional who has worked on a lot of these high conflict cases to get children of abuse out of these kinds of situations. So I've seen this stuff on the front line, and I've watched people turn the other way and go, oh, we're going to go ahead and give them the benefit of the doubt. It's like, that's fine. But, unless your bullet is named the benefit of the doubt, I wouldn't give it to him. That's the point. And this is a huge issue. And it's a huge issue that's going across the country. And that's why you see like these teachers are involved now. And it's become a massive pandemic. And you got these people in the Manosphere promoting this stuff. And they're also trying to create these groups of fellow pedophiles so they can go do whatever it is they do together. It's a cancer. And it's horrible.
Yeah, it's cancer. It's Manosphere cancer in this case is the best way to put it.
Yeah.
I'm glad John's suing him and stuff. Good for you, man.
Yeah, basically the quick summary there of what happened is he bought one of my products using his own email address. Okay. And then a few weeks later, he released a product taking tons of novel stuff that I had innovated in that product. It wasn't too hard to put 2 and 2 together. I called him out publicly. And then I went and did some research about his other products. And he had just taken products from other people, including Player Supreme, who was a dead guy that he called the N-word, even though he was dead, and a whole bunch of other cases. And I outlined all that. And in revenge, he went and slandered me across 3 extremely long videos, just full fabricating endless amounts of stuff to try to discredit my skills, discredit my coaching abilities, discredit all the proof I have, just pulling stuff out of his ass. And I sent him a cease and desist. He ignored that. I sent him a letter of intent to sue. He ignored that. He put those up in videos and said, look, he's not going to do shit. And then I sued him and his business in Florida. He's living in Tokyo, and he got served personally in Tokyo. There's a Japanese lawsuit too for a defamation case. And I could go on and on about this guy.
Yeah, his mom is one of my neighbors here in Florida. She lives like 10 minutes up the road, His mom that he talks about how hot she is and how beautiful she is. It's sick, man. There's a whole blog post you can hunt down on his blog where he talks about how hot his mom is. He still does it publicly to some degree on his videos, I think. It's really, really weird behavior. I think he was like molested as a kid or something.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. I mean, because here's the issue: if you've got an Oedipus complex like that against your mom, and you're taking photos of little children, maybe you've got issues. It's like that. I don't know if you remember that YouTuber that went trans. They call him Chris Chan, and
I don't know.
Chris Chan was a real popular internet person, and he was one of these guys. He did video game speed running, and he live streamed video gaming, and it came out in his Discord and elsewhere that he was banging his 73-year-old mom with dementia.
Oh my God.
And he was bragging about like how she was into it and how he was into it and how she totally, it was really, this guy's like 40 years old. Okay. His mom's in her 70s. She's got dementia. Well, they eventually said, you know what? We're going to arrest this guy. The cops came to his house. They threw the cuffs on him. He's being criminally charged right now. I forget if it's North or South Carolina, but that's kind of the end result of this is that you see the deterioration, and the guy is complete cancer. He's complete cancer. In fact, apparently he went into court at one point and he was like, I'm famous on YouTube. You can't throw me in jail. he basically tried to tranny out Alpha, the judge. It didn't work so well for him.
I think that at some point, Jonathan Pigwood, Peterwood, he will be charged, arrested for pedophilia or fucking his mom or something. Like something's going to happen. Something's going to happen.
Well, yeah, we're going to be going after him for criminal charges as well. I can't get into the details, but there's potential laws he broke as well.
Yeah, it's so bad. I tried to get my fans too. I think on a lesser scale, obviously it's not pedophilia, but I think Donovan Conovan. I think he's violated probably some laws in Florida and New Jersey where he lives or used to live for false advertising and just various deceptive practices. Even DDJ did a video, God bless him here, on exposing the contract fraud, I guess you would call it, for his conference where they steal your money. There's no refunds even if they cancel the event, which is like unconscionable contract. He even did cancel his event, and I think he did steal some of the money. Based on what he said publicly was really shady. He's like, we're canceling it, but we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. It's like, motherfucker, you can't. This was last year when he tried to attack my convention. He put his event on the same day and then he had to cancel it like a fucking loser. I called out some people too, like Aaron Clary and Terrence Popp and these other fucking beta males that refused to stand up for this. This was obvious fraud, that he had weaponized their reputations, their names as speakers and YouTubers or whatever to sell tickets and then keep all the money and steal it. And just I think he gives people basically ebooks, right? DDJ in his contract or something, other products and services. It's like, that's not a refund, dude. I don't want $1,300 in fucking ebooks about Womanese volume 57. Like, this
and more importantly, I don't want a $1.50 ebook that you say is worth $375, right?
Yeah, it's fraud. It's really aggressive fraud, and no one stands up against it. And when you do, there's a negativity bias too, because these people with negative emotions are more likely to speak up. But when you call it out, these little simps come after you, and it's like, dude, this is like, I'm doing a great service, and you're just giving me hell for it. I don't really, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. It's actually kind of fun. I feed off of this negative energy from these little fucking losers. It's part of why I do it. It's like a lot of fun. It's really satisfying. Like it's like a steak, like a fucking, like a grilled steak, just bite into that shit.
Well, and if you really want to see what the long-term impacts of a lot of these types of manosphere frauds, if you really want to see the damage of the long-term impacts of these, you don't have to look any further than the men's rights movement, because the men's rights movement has been dealing with this for 20 or 30 years, where, they've got these frauds in the community, or these people who they're hiding in the community and they're predators. And then they violate the law, both civilly and criminally, and they prey upon the other people in those communities. And so we see that a lot. I've seen it a lot in the 25 to 28 years.
Is this, you gave me some links. Is this an example of that?
So this is an example of that. The lady's name is Dr. Tori Evans Barton. And I think she's got a degree in like a doctorate in philosophy. And she created this thing called the Fatherless Foundation. Now, what she does is she markets this idea that she's going to help these people get an attorney and get their kids back. They pay her some money. She acts as a middleman, goes and finds the attorney, and then supposedly helps them. Now, she has helped some people. There are some actual legitimate testimonials, but as many people as she helped, from what I understand, she's also harmed people. She's taken the money and run. Like, I have a personal friend of mine that she borrowed thousands of dollars from and never paid it back. I know an attorney she borrowed a bunch of money from. She never paid it back. I know people where they've given her donations and she's ran with the money. She switched there was a criminal charge against her at one point for fraud. And I think it was in Georgia. Better Business Bureau said she settled 4 complaints in the last 3 years, for example. And she keeps trying to rebrand herself. And that's the thing. She's only one example of many. There's other people, like there's a guy named Greg Parsons, who's a veteran who lost custody of his kids. And so he's selling these legal documents to help veterans avoid paying child support off of their disability. But in one case, I know particularly, he actually told a veteran to forge his ex-wife's name on these documents so that he wouldn't have to pay child support to get it garnished out of his disability check from the military. And by the way, like I said, if Greg Parsons is listening to this, I encourage you to attempt to sue me on that for defamation, because I can prove it. So you need to understand, like, I'm not saying this shit lightly. He knows who I am. My name is Bob Lewis. He knows who I am. He knows the client I'm talking about. So this is my personal experience with him. And when this was called out, because it's a felony, and more importantly, when you forge a federal document with the United States military, that's a federal felony. Okay. These are serious issues. You're destroying lives. You're setting people up for failure.
Are you talking about perjury or what?
Well, it's forgery. When you sign somebody else's signature on a federal document during the federal government, right? It's a federal forgery. And so the problem that you have with this, again, is that they're taking advantage of these guys who are isolated and desperate, and these non-custodial parents. And I mean, there are some non-custodial female parents out there too, but this is mostly an issue that impacts men, and then you've got these other people like Gordon Rose, for example, who he's going after anybody who tries to help somebody in the men's rights community. He goes after him and he calls him a fraud and he attacks him and he does these expose videos. And it turns out that he lost custody of his kids because he was violent. And then he turned out that he got so upset at the judge, he started stalking the judge's children in an effort to harass the judge. And he was charged criminally and convicted in the state of Arizona for this sort of thing. So these are the kind of predators we're talking about. But even on a lower level, there are a lot of predators who, in that MRA father's rights, equal shared parenting community, there are a lot of people out there who, they're guilty of domestic violence. They're guilty of child abuse. They're guilty of the things that they've been accused of. And they're hiding in these communities, and they're hoping that by hiding in these communities, they can rehabilitate their character and fly under the radar. And so that's the issue. And a lot of these fathers' rights organizations, they're embezzling the money that they're receiving. I know there's one organization right now, for example, they held a big conference. I want to say it was last year or the year before. And it turned out people were donating to them for like travel expenses and things like that. And they wouldn't even give it to the organization to have the organization disperse it. They just put the money in their pocket and they spent it however they were going to spend it. So those types of things are huge issues that have to be addressed. And the problem is that there are so many people out there who need help, whether these guys need help in their dating life, and so somebody like John Anthony can help them, or whether they're isolated and they don't have any strong male role models, so 21 can help them, or guys that are going through the divorce family law system, or they've been destroyed by the family courts. Somebody like me who's a legal professional can help them. And just so we're clear, I'm not a life coach, right? And I'm not going to be giving legal advice. I'll give my personal opinion. But
yeah, you're not an attorney, you're paralegal.
Correct. And I only work with attorneys. So I don't touch these cases unless I have an attorney working with me, because I'm within the four corners of the law, because I'm not an attorney. And there are things that an attorney can tell you that I cannot tell you. And it's not because, of anything other than, they're trained. There's a reason they go to school for 7 years and get a Juris Doctorate degree. There's a reason a psychologist goes to school for 6 to 8 years before they become a psychologist or a counselor or things like that. And, going online and reading somebody's blog post and then plagiarizing it and rebranding it as your own, or changing 5 words and making it your own and writing a book about it.
That's what Rollo did. Yeah.
Right.
No,
that doesn't make you a professional. It doesn't make you an expert. Right. It just doesn't do it.
But it's fascinating when you look at the effect, right? It's as if he was not with any truth component behind it, but he's tricked everyone into thinking that.
Well, and it reminds me. So, like in my own divorce case, the parenting investigator had no experience with children of child abuse. So my kids were abused, and they were in the home with their mom for 5 years, and they were abused 5 and 6 days a week. I eventually was able to get custody back of them. But in the process of doing that, we're in trial. I'm pro se in my trial, which means I don't have an attorney. And I'm questioning the investigator who did an incompetent investigation. And so he tells me that he's an expert in child abuse. Well, I went through his whole curriculum vitae. He's got no classes, no academic training, no degrees in anything related to child abuse. He took a CLE one time, which is a continuing legal education, about 4 hours of training, where they basically talk to attorneys on how to litigate child abuse cases. So you can't learn shit about child abuse in 4 hours, right? So he tells me, he goes, well, the reason that I'm an expert is because I have all this experience in child abuse. And so I said, as an investigator or a perpetrator? And then I told the judge, well, we need to, I withdraw the question because I didn't want to get sanctioned. But then I went on to say, well, my concern is that you're trying to tell me that your experience qualifies you an expert, but that's like saying that a woman who's been a rape victim for 15 years is an expert in sexual assault, when really she's been on the receiving end. And you see this all the time. These people have some exposure in the community, and then they start holding themselves out as experts when they have zero expertise whatsoever. They may have some theoretical knowledge, or they can mouth the words, but they don't have any actual wisdom or experience in doing the things that they claim that they do.
Yeah.
That's just a con man, though, is what you've described.
Yes.
Yeah. Rollo is case in point. It's like, I devoted most of my free time over the past 15 years to go through and do all the dating stuff. And I can just tell by the way he speaks about this shit that he has no idea what he's talking about. All he's doing is repeating stuff. Where did you say the majority of it was, Anthony? The So Suave forums?
3 places, I would say. It's So Suave, Reddit, particularly the Red Pill subreddit, that he was one voice of 300,000. He stole a lot. I've had guys on that Reddit reach out to me citing the exact blog post Rollo crafted from their stolen post that was posted 6 months earlier. Multiple guys. Very line item shit that he steals.
Yeah, that Boaz dude in the Irrational Male book, he said Rollo's just a good plagiarist.
Also, though, he steals, most importantly, lately I want to do a video about this. He steals from the philosopher and novelist who died in 1982, but he steals from Ayn Rand. a famous philosopher. She wrote a bunch of books,
Atlas
Atlas
Shrugged.
Shrugged, The Fountainhead, all kinds of nonfiction books. Particularly, well, he steals from the philosophy heavily, I've realized, much more so than the average guy, even who's looking at his fraud and plagiarism, realizes. So it's not just So Suave, it's not just some random pickup artist form, it's not some random blog like Rouge he stole from or whatever, right? Box Day maybe. No, it's not just Reddit. It's actual philosophy he steals from and he bastardizes it. His MPOO, mental point of origin, for example. I talked to him about this for years, and he was always very evasive about it and dodgy and never wanted to talk about it. I'm like, dude, your MPOO is like exactly like rational egoism, rational self-interest that Ayn Rand described. It's not just similar, it's like verbatim, right? And whenever I would confront him about this, he would just completely fucking shut off, right? And even on the Red Pill subreddit, there's guys who would compare objectivist ethics, objectivist rational self-interest to Rollo's MPOO. They would draw very obvious similarities to it that were fundamental. Like the whole fucking thing is ripped off basically. And these little beta males, these little simps for Rollo, they go out and they're like, oh, Rollo's a genius. He did all this shit. And it's like, dude, this is so heavily lifted and plagiarized and stolen.
Wikipedia too. Boaz shows how he takes a whole bunch of shit from Wikipedia. He shows the stuff, side by side, and it's again just straight plagiarism.
Well, and I think that the other thing that it's important to bring up is that there are so many people that take this stuff at face value. Again, it goes to that red pill blind spot, but it just goes to show you, like you see some of these frauds and how popular they become. It goes to show you how many men are in need, how many men are isolated, and how many men are actually actively searching for good, solid, healthy, masculine red pill wisdom, and they're not getting it, right? And so that's the thing that I think that needs to be addressed as well at some point. And so that's why these conversations are so important, because when you're a plagiarist, when you're a con artist, when all you're doing is scamming, that ends up being a huge issue. Like I said, you're harming more men than helping them. And there are so many men looking for help, then they need strong, healthy, masculine role models. And they just don't have as many as we need.
Well, this is also the wider internet. There's unlimited access to information. There's an unlimited quantity of information, but so much of it is this fucking terrible garbage that these dudes, even authentically looking for answers, just find
every industry basically.
Yeah, I think, and I agree, and I think the Manosphere is one of the worst because it involves a lot of guys who are exiting divorces and relationships and marriages. They can't get laid, so there's a sex issue now that no one wants to talk about. Sex is so taboo even today in culture, even with our liberated feminist bullshit. It's still, no one wants to have a real conversation about like the ins and outs of what works and what doesn't, what the realities are. And so they get roped up in all this. It's really, I hate how the fake news calls stuff misinformation, but objectively it's misinformation. This kind of stuff, it's just fake. It's pseudoscientific garbage.
Well, it's marketing propaganda. Absolutely.
Speaking of marketing propaganda, I wanted to have a look at this. So these are some recent propaganda pieces that have been put out. This guy's a huge fraud too and a weirdo. He looks like a child stalker too, like a John Pigwood. This Savo guy, whatever the fuck his name is. So this guy's a sketchy weirdo. And basically they've been putting out videos that are aping, for example, my video, The Truth About Donovan Sharp, which was a massive expose documentary on Donovan. It's 3 hours long. He hates it. He talks about it in his videos all the time. There's a bunch of his videos now in the description. I'll show it to you in a minute, where he actually cites the documentary and says, don't believe it, don't believe it, don't believe it, which is great for me because it makes people search for it. Now they're curious, right? The Streisand effect, the Jack Murphy effect. But anyway, these videos, there's a bunch of them now that get uploaded everywhere, and they're counter propaganda, basically. It's a psyop for people. They're trying to SEO compete against my video about Donovan. So it's the truth about Rollo Tomasi and the truth about Donovan Sharp and all this fucking fake garbage.
Well, and what that tells you is that tells you that there's somebody behind them that's pushing their propaganda. So, for example, a few years ago, YouTube had this thing where they would take certain content creators and they would finance them. And they would advertise like 50 content creators every year that they would finance. And usually it was like, social justice and things like that. But I firmly believe that there are people in the Manosphere that are being financed behind the scenes, not just Jack Murphy, but others. who were financed behind the scenes to create a level of propaganda to lead people away from the manosphere, or to create such drama that people aren't going to start seeing, looking for facts and looking for strong masculine role models and things like that. It's basically kind of like what happened with the MGTOW community over the last, 4 or 5 years, where now next to nobody identifies as MGTOW because the infighting was so bad. But most of that infighting, or at least a good portion of it, was conducted by AstroTurf campaigns, people from the outside masquerade as MGTOW, and infiltration from the outside. So you see the same thing now happening across the general manosphere. And like, for instance, Fresh and Fit, like one of those guys was he was an employee of the Department of Homeland Security, right? You've got people like Rollo Tomasi, who says he's a foundation person of the Red Pill community, but he's got backdoor relationships with feminist reporters from places like the New York Times. So you have these people making these backdoor deals, and they can't deal with it. So the question that obviously should be asked is, why is it that Donovan Sharp can get banned off of YouTube multiple times, and now all of a sudden when you're reporting for ban evasion, nothing happens? Well, it's because he's been whitelisted. It's because this is a propaganda piece, and it's because they know that as long as Donovan Sharp exists, the manosphere won't unite. And because people like Donovan Sharp, Rollo Tomasi, Fresh and Fit, and that particular inner circle, they're going to detract from the manosphere, and they're going to keep everybody divided. But the second that men start coming together and start uniting, all of a sudden you're going to see seismic shifts in masculinity. It's sad because, like, I even saw an article about 2 or 3 weeks ago that the United States military was complaining that they couldn't get valid recruits for the military because the guys the young men who were actually going to apply for the military today, they don't have strong masculine bone structures. They have weak bone structures. So their skeletal structures aren't strong enough to serve in the United States Army. And, low levels of testosterone, you have these guys out there now that are in their 20s and 30s, and they have testosterone levels that rival an 80-year-old man. So, there's a huge, huge crisis in masculinity that's happening right now. And the only way to combat it is with, common sense red pill truths. Go to the gym, do resistance training, eat red meat, eat, valid protein other than some man's cock, those types of things, right? You have to be able to absorb that knowledge and wisdom that's been passed around for the generations. And they're really making a full court effort to prevent that from happening with all these little, they're basically trying to reframe these public service announcements we're making. They're trying to reframe them as internet beefs so nobody pays attention.
Yeah, and they're not beefs. Like, I really had, number one, Donovan started this crap with me, and that's not irrelevant, but ultimately it's not why I did my documentary. It's because the truth needed to be told and it needed to be exposed. Him attacking me gave me a good window because I know he would personalize it anyway, right? So I try to stay ahead of it. But yeah, it's about the issues. It's about him lying to his audience. It's about him lying to the manosphere. Donovan Conovan has lied, just like Fresh and Fit, to millions of people, millions of men in the manosphere, right? Not just on YouTube, but in our community. And no one calls this shit out. And it's just pathetic to me. And it needs to, I'm an anti-fraud universally. I hate Christian frauds, like these women who want to be pastors and priests and preachers and shit. I'm not a Christian, but it's aggravating to me and annoying. And if I can help guys like Michael Foster and Jesse Lee Peterson and whatever, and whoever else, these Christians, expose these frauds, that's good. I hate fraud. Fraud's bad no matter if it's in the manosphere or some other industry or whatever. I just fucking hate it. I hate it philosophically too, because we live in reality, is my view, right? I live in reality, you live in reality. It doesn't matter whether you agree or not, you do. This to me is a fact of existence. And frauds are anti-reality. They have to fake everything. It's fake results and fake lays and fake women. And, Donovan, for example, Conovan, lying about, as we showed in the example, the intro video, he's admitted to faking for his audience, faking them about his wife's age, misleading his audience. He created this fake illusion that he dated this hot 10 stunner who is younger than him by 7 years or something. In reality, she's a year older than him. It is a nasty old fat woman.
It's like what Owen Cook
menopause.
said. Oh, one of the hottest girls ever. It turns out to look disgusting.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just fake.
But everyone hears that and they're like, wow, he's so cool.
Yeah, which amazes me at the level. There's a lack of skepticism that these guys have to say, if someone makes a claim, when someone makes a claim to me, generally you need to prove that claim, show evidence of that claim. Otherwise, I'm going to dismiss it as easily as you presented it. This to me is a pretty logical and reasonable way to live. These guys don't do that. They hear Donovan says, I fuck tons. number one, he can't prove it. Number two, he never has. Number three, if you look at the woman he married, right, private married or whatever, she's a fat sweat hog. I mean, literally, this shit's disgusting. She's a 2, right? In America, she's like a 2 or a 3, and worldwide, I would
He's
say
saying hard. He's saying hard 9.
Yeah, I mean, I think she's a hard 9, which is insane. I mean, this to me on a worldwide sexual marketplace scale is probably a 1, right? Let's just call it what it is. It's a big nasty woman, and he pretends like she surrendered control and submitted to me. Even that's not true. Even that is all fake. He jokes about her in his Patreon. You can go check it out. Just search blue ball. How she blue balls him and controls him, and controls the sex and controls the relationship, which even in Donovan's own pretend worldview is pretend philosophy, red pill shit. This is like very blue pill beta shit in the extreme, overt, obvious, 100% blue pill beta shit. That's his life. That's what
gets me too. Is these guys are so hypocritical.
Yeah.
Where they say like, don't get married, they get married. Don't date girls that aren't hot. They date ugly girls or marry ugly girls. And they're living a life that's totally
sweat hogs.
What they're saying online.
This is a war pig, man.
Well, they're living a lie. And honestly, maybe the hard 9, when he says it's a hard 9, maybe he's speaking German. Maybe it's a hard no,
No, it's a 9. No, she is a 9 on a scale of 1 to 100, as MGTOW Dictionary said. A scale of 1 to 100, she's a 9. That's fine. I would agree with that. But he's saying 1 to 10, obviously. He actually says she's a 9 or better, it's just, and this is, I think what guys don't realize is one of the most effective ways to lie is to not lie a little bit, it's to lie a lot. To exaggerate it, when she's a 1 or a 2, you exaggerate it to being almost a 10, right? So the lie is so extravagant. These guys
don't even be telling himself that too. I mean, you think he he probably believes that
to some degree. Like he does think she's hot because he's retarded in a beta. Like it's a fucking loser. And I've noticed this in the POA community, not just with Donovan, but the Manosphere for the 16 years since I've been in it, since 2005. Guys are always bumping their numbers, right?
Yeah.
If a girl is objectively a 5, he calls her a 7. This was even in the 2008, or even he'll say she's an 8. It's like, no, dude, she's a fucking 5. Like, and I think one of the reasons is, my theory is that when a guy is like beta and can't get girls and just can't talk to women, whatever the case is, the specifics of it are, they have a ceiling of a 10. And the 10 is the hottest girl they could possibly get on the best day of their life with their game at an absolute maximum. So if that's a 5 for them, or a 6 is the ceiling, then a girl who's a 4 is now an 8. You know what I mean? So I think they set it's relative. They set a personal ceiling.
But they also want to sound cooler. Guys want to sound cooler all the time.
For sure. Yeah, and it's sick. But yeah, I think it's the extreme nature of the lie is what makes it believable to these guys. They just don't doubt it. It's like, oh, he said he bangs 9s and 10s. He must bang 9s and 10s. It's like, no, he actually bangs 2s.
And let's be honest, right? A lot of these guys are doing this because they need the external validation, because they lack self-esteem, they lack their own identity, as far as they're not secure in who they are, they're not secure in their own identity. And so that's why you see this kind of peacocking in a little bit, and again, I understand if you're like a dating coach or whatever and this is what you do for a living, you've got to share your numbers. I get all that, but there's a lot of guys who are sharing numbers that are nowhere in the realm of reality, and they're just shitty with women. And it's just,
this guy was banging 10s. Yeah, this guy right here. Yeah, I believe that.
Right.
With this big Miss Piggy. Yeah. What a fucking mess, man. But DDJ, you mentioned that the Manosphere will unite as we get these frauds out, or they implode or explode or get sued or whatever.
Here's what I think will happen. I mean, I think that because really the history of the Manosphere is the history of Manosphere conflict.
Let me finish my point real quick. Then I want to get into the Manosphere conflict. I want to make it known that my goal in the Manosphere is to unite it. And I've said this explicitly for a couple of years now. Even in 2009 or 10, I bought a website called, you can check this out, there's a registrar of it, unitethecommunity.org. This is a domain I owned, and I was trying to unite the Manosphere and the POA community, kind of like I do with 21 Convention. I bring these people together because no one else was fucking doing that. And I thought this was important and useful. And I was still young enough to believe these guys, that they were good-natured, a lot of them. Owen Cook, for example, and Neil Strauss and whatever. But I've been trying that for a long time, and people see me as divisive and high conflict. And while I am high conflict, I'm not afraid of it, and I'm happy to dive into it with memes and exposés and whatever. That to me is how you unite the manosphere. You have to get these frauds out. You have to expose them. You have to make fun of them through whatever mechanisms you have: facts, evidence, memes, fraud, exposing the fraud, lawsuits. These things are repellent of frauds, and that's how you unite the manosphere. That's the only way to do it. This kumbaya, get along, oh, let's all just fucking be okay with each other. That's sick to me, and that's the opposite of uniting. I don't want to unite with frauds. I hate these people. They're sick. They're pieces of shit. They're parasites and they're vampires. And unless and until they repent and own their fraud explicitly and clearly and completely change course, then I'm not okay with them. And they're never going to do that, obviously. 99 times out of 100, that'll never fucking happen.
Yeah, I have a more cynical view. I don't know if there's, I'd like to think, like I said, I made like 115 videos about these different guys, but at the end of the day, cognitive dissonance is too strong and too powerful. So I have a little more cynical approach, not for everyone, but I think overall they're just growing in power. Fresh and Fit has been exposed a million times, even by big platforms. No one cares.
Well, the issue is that you also have to understand, liars always lie, and YouTube is lying. So they're gonna puff up the views, they're gonna puff up the subscribers, they're gonna puff up the comment sections, right? And they're gonna do that to make these people. It's a wag the dog type of exercise to make these people more popular than they are. And the reality, though, is that the audience, the men who are looking for the red pill wisdom, they all know. Right? They're not watching these people. They're not taking advice from a lot of these people. Maybe they do, like when they first see the manosphere, or they first understand it for what it is. That's when you start seeing, oh yeah, maybe these people are new commenters or whatever. But the more that they get exposed and the more they start looking at different content creators, the more they get exposed to more of the actual wisdom and stuff. And they realize, oh, okay, these people aren't really healthy. I'm going to go ahead and stop watching them, and I'm going to go to somebody else, or I'm going to start taking elements of what they say that is baseline truth, and I'm going to apply it to this other content creator's content and apply that to my life. And then maybe I'm not going to watch videos for 6 months because I'm already doing what I need to be doing to be a better person for myself. But I think as far as the exposing people to the community, I agree with you. I think that a lot of people are buying into it per se, at least in the beginning. But you can't red pill somebody who's not ready to be red pilled. You can't force somebody to say, look, this will help you, right? It's like the whole, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. It's the same concept here. People aren't necessarily ready for this because they come from broken homes. They don't have any positive male role models. Maybe they were physically or sexually or emotionally abused as a child. And what happens is that a lot of these content creators, they don't actually take into account the emotional toll that a lot of the men we're trying to help go through. And so whenever you talk about, the emotional elements, all of a sudden, unless it's Rollo and he's trying to plagiarize somebody, nobody's ever talking about that except for people like us. But that said, I think at the end of the day, we're going to see, number one, we're going to see these frauds go away as they fade. We'll see new ones come up. And that's just the nature of the beast. But I also think that the viewers, especially the ones watching this video, they're far more sophisticated than they used to be. So for example, and you see this in the mainstream too. So like in 2017, I remember conversations I was having in the MGTOW community that was considered esoteric knowledge that even most of the manosphere really didn't talk about. We fast forward to 2021, early 2022, and some of those concepts are being talked about by Tucker Carlson, or they're being talked about by mainstream media personalities. Now, obviously, they're not going into some big diatribe about how they saw some dating coach say this, or they saw some manosphere person say this, but they know that the knowledge and the wisdom is there, and it's permeated all aspects of society. And so the men who are following this stuff now are far more savvy, and they're far more knowledgeable in general than say the guys in 2010, 2012, and that era. So that kind of gives me hope as far as where things are going to go. But the reality is that I think the most important thing we can do to help men is to teach them to think critically, teach them to use their deductive reasoning, and to prevent them from self-isolating. So when they do need the dating coach help, and they've objectively said, okay, I've gotten to a plateau, they can go to somebody like John Anthony. Or if they do need some red pill reinforcement and they want to listen to multiple tribes of the Manosphere, maybe, and they want to go travel somewhere, they can go to the 21 convention. Or if they want, some legal help, they can go to the legal people who can deal with it, whether it be on Facebook or wherever else it is. And that leads me to my final point is that while YouTube is extremely relevant still today, we all need to be embracing alt tech, because there's a lot of really good voices on alt tech, on Gab, on Minds, on BitChute, on Odyssey, on Rumble, who they're making content exclusive to those platforms. And, the message isn't being gotten out because everybody's afraid of these platforms. So just be careful, think for yourself, and, make the best decisions you can make. But don't blindly trust somebody, because at that point, you're just going to become a red pill NPC.
Yeah. I do want to comment. Thanks for that expo, or what do we call it? Monologue, DDJ. Appreciate it. I want to comment on something that, you were commenting on in here too, but John Anthony brought up a minute ago, the cynicism. I don't blame you for being cynical about it, because the situation is dire and it's fucked up, and it has been fucked up for a long time. And the longer you've been in the Manosphere, the easier it is to be cynical. I mean, you've been in it for a long time like me. Alan Roger Curry is another guy I like a lot. I guess you'd call him a dating coach per se, or a seduction coach, whatever. He's been in it since the 90s, and he's seen it too. And he's seen how fucking sick and retarded it is. And it's really hard to make it better. Even with 115 expose videos, I have dozens on my channel, probably over 50 at this point as well. I don't even know how many. Like the one we showed at the beginning of the show, that was a cut up of a couple different expose videos. I have my documentaries I've put out. I've shared a lot of your expose videos, John. Happy to do so. But it's definitely an uphill battle. What I will say, though, is that in any domain of life, the truth spreads slowly and lies spread fast. So, and I think Winston Churchill had a famous quote. That was where the concept was introduced to me, from a famous old quote of his from back in the 30s or whatever it was. But I think that holds true universally and throughout today as well, and throughout the Manosphere in particular, with this situation, this ongoing fraud situation, that these guys lie, it spreads fast, they get exposed, and it takes a long fucking time for that truth to reach out. And in the meantime, we'll keep growing usually and get more fans and this and that. And it's tough. It's really tough to fight against that. But there's some things that work in our favor. A lot of these guys tend to implode. They blow themselves up. A lot of our exposing with Donovan, for example, was just through his own words that we were able to find and put together into compelling narratives on these videos. And they cause massive damage, like my documentary, to his business. And I'm happy that they do by exposing facts and evidence about his lies that he's told. The fact that video I showed a minute ago on his channel with, his channel and another channel it came out on, let's see. I'm going to pull it up again real quick. This one, the fact that they're still putting these out now, he's fighting. Rolo is probably behind this, to put in Donovan as well. They work together behind the scenes to put out this propaganda, this false propaganda, to try to compete with SEO. They're losing, of course. My shit's still way better on YouTube than theirs. But the fact that they're even doing this a year later after my documentary about Donovan means that Donovan is still bleeding cash. And if you look at his Patreon numbers, I think it shows that. And he's constantly buying subscribers and shit on YouTube and shit. I mean, it's his channel and his reputation are falling apart. It just took a long fucking time. Not a month, not 6 months. It takes like a year, and it just keeps going and going and going. It's like the truth is like poison to these people, basically. And the more you can put it out, the better. Now, Fresh and Fit are a bigger animal, and they're going to take a lot more poison, a lot more facts and evidence to take down. Even with these big channels, it hasn't been enough yet. But I have some ideas. It's definitely not impossible to take them down with facts and evidence. And they might just implode as well. They might just get kicked off YouTube, even with Fed connections. I'm
of the opinion of hitting them legally, to be honest. A lot of these guys are doing fraud. They're doing deceptive business practices. They're doing coercive predatory lending.
Yep.
It goes on and on and on and on. A lot of these guys are evading taxes. Where there's smoke, there's fire.
Yep.
I know a lot of stuff behind. Even look at Fresh and Fit, the way you just mentioned. They've gone on record saying they're going to remove people's Instagrams. They've gone on record saying they're abusing the YouTube copyright system. They're breaking laws, and they're violating the rules of these platforms explicitly and definitively.
Uh-huh.
I agree. I agree wholeheartedly. In fact, it's a lot of conversations Anthony and I have had behind the scenes. I've actually called out a lot of these red pill life coaches and said, look, they're providing counseling services to people who are suffering from depression. They're suffering from actual mental health issues. and they're doing so without a license, and it's a crime. And it's just like, providing legal advice without being an attorney. You can go to jail for that. You can get a
practicing medicine, pretending to be a doctor. You can go to jail for that shit. Yeah.
Exactly.
How do you guys feel about Kevin Samuels? I've publicly called him the simp father. I think he is. He recently simped out, sold out to, was it Nicki Minaj or whatever? Or one of those.
Someone told me that his whole philosophy is that like it's just money and nothing else. Money is going to determine if you get the girls. Is that accurate?
I don't know, to be honest.
Well, Kevin Samuels, his audience isn't men. His audience is women. Okay, that's number one. And number two, he's trying to be the Black Dr. Phil. Yep. That's the only thing that's what he's trying to do. His audience is women. It's a drama channel. It's a lot of feminist or feminine arguments. It's emotional arguments, right? It's an appeal to emotions, and he does that because he's trying to be the female shock jock, just like a Dr. Phil type.
Yep, I've seen people call him the Oprah Winfrey of the Manosphere too, or something like that. But I think he's a simp father. I don't think everything he says is wrong or bad. People misconstrue this. I don't even really know if he's a fraud. I haven't called him a fraud yet. I haven't seen like hard evidence of that, like you'd see in a child stalker, like Jonathan Pigwood or a Conovan Chart or a fraud father or fake and fraud. I mean, there's a lot of them. But he definitely simped out and sold out when he got big. And that to me is telling of his character. That's why I called him this. People think it's like I hate him or something, and I don't hate him. I don't know him. I've never talked to him. I've never seen anything too egregious with what he's selling. He's not selling like fraudulent courses or anything like that. I think he does want to be a Dr. Phil. I think that's accurate. Whatever. I don't have a particular hatred of that. But it's that when he was confronted with a woman, a celebrity woman, and in a big moment, he simped out and he sold out and he chickened out. And his own fans have confirmed that in our comments. A lot of people were really disappointed when he talked to, I think it was Nicki Minaj or whoever. And that to me, it's telling of who he is, that he got scared and he sold out and he didn't stick to his guns and what he normally says on his show, going after women who are disgusting hoes and shit and, brainwashing young women. He chickened out. And that to me, that's bad. I don't know if that makes you a fraud. It just makes you a pussy.
Yeah. Someone sent me a good summary of him recently. They said he's a 2-time divorcee. He says money is the only real value, whereas game, swagger, masculinity, good bedroom skills, social skills, those are all counterfeit currency. And then this dude showed me evidence that Kevin Samuels was only making like 11 grand a year in his 30s. He showed me like these documents. But yeah, he said on the Fresh and Fit podcast, he's dating a lot of women and is taking care of them. And he said that a lot of people are saying he's paying sugar babies. But yeah, I mean, this whole thing that money is the only value you have to a woman, that's bullshit.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just more, I mean, so many, these frauds are a good example of it. I'm not even saying Kevin Samuels, again, is a fraud necessarily. He could be. Maybe we'll see some evidence of that. But the fake and fraud crowd too, even their simp fans are like this. They're obsessed with money, bling, bling, dog. Like, it's really low IQ materialistic shit, and they have no higher values or goals or aspirations.
It's the same thing like the image rappers put out and stuff like that.
Yes.
Those guys are always trying to like flaunt, just different stuff. But it was funny because in the beginning, like the fake press releases they bought, they were just posing next to cars and planes that weren't theirs, wearing a CEO necklace.
They still are.
It's success porn. Yeah, it's success porn.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so pathetic to me. Like, you're gonna die someday. It could be tomorrow, it could be today, it could be 10 years from now. Who the fuck knows? And I don't have a problem with people making a lot of money, right? Whatever you're gonna do, make this thing, this service, this product, this widget, whatever the fuck, build a business, have a career, be a coach, paralegal, lawyer, whatever the fuck. Good for you, man. Be a millionaire, be a fucking billionaire for all I care. But if you're just gonna worship money and that's the only thing you care about in life, you're pathetic. Like, you're going to die someday, and the minute before you die, you're going to realize you wasted your fucking life on bling, bling, money, dog. Like, this shit it's really, really pathetic. And I think they're abusing it. The rappers and stuff promote it in the black community, and that's why I don't think they target black men intentionally, young black men, but I think because they're black, well, I think maybe because they're black, they do it automatically.
So
you know what I mean?
One of the worst kept secrets in the African-American community. So I used to read a website called raprehab.com. And I know the guy that runs it. And we talked behind the scenes a lot. And one of the things he told me, and this is something that kind of I was able to independently confirm, was that a lot of the music industries that promote the gangster rap, those same executives are the major stockholders in the private prison system. So they're basically promoting this idea of gangster rap. These guys commit the crimes and then they go to the private prisons, and so they're making money off the rap and they're making money off the full prisons. And that's one of the reasons why you see somebody like, for instance, Bill Cosby got targeted so badly, because Bill Cosby, he had money, he had women throw themselves at him, he liked his party drugs, and so all these people came out of the woodwork to go after him. But they only went after him because Bill Cosby started speaking about positive masculinity in the Black community, personal responsibility. So there's a huge issue that's going on here where these people are being psyoped in these behaviors on a massive scale. And positive male role models are a huge thing. And now that the economy is imploding, people are starting to realize that those answers that they got are the wrong answers. And I think that's why we're going to see a huge influx of men joining the red pill community, looking for the answers they're not getting from the mainstream.
Yeah. And I think it's important to clean up our community as best as possible. It's not going to be perfect. There's no way it's ever going to be perfect, and it never has. But to clean it up as best as possible as it continues to hit mainstream news, like I did with Make Women Great Again, hit all the new stuff back in 2020, right before COVID. Kevin Samuels has hit a lot of new stuff, the celebrities and shit he's talked to now, whatever, all these rappers and shit. I don't like these fucking gangster rappers and shit. Who gives a fuck? But it's the Manosphere keeps hitting different news things, different news cycles, right? Jack Murphy even being a huge cuck hit on some news articles and stuff. And this is going to keep happening over time as the years go by. And sometimes it's going to be for the worse. I think John Anthony or DDJ earlier in the show was talking about, these guys could be, in my opinion too, I'll just own it personally as a personal opinion. I think the fraud father, Rollery Tomasi, could easily inspire a mass shooter. I think he kind of wants to, in his own psychopathic, sociopathic way, to get book sales, because he knows if some kid shoots up a school or a yoga studio or whatever the fuck, and the rational male, shithole male, is sitting in his fucking backpack, that's going to sell books for Rollo. And Rollo is that fucked up in the head, is that much of a pathological piece of shit personality, he would love that. I believe that firmly. A lot of the speakers I talk to behind the scenes, they also believe that. And I think it's very likely that at some point he will inspire that. This guy is that sick in the head. He's that twisted and that fucked up. He's not just a commercial operator. Rollo has a God complex and a Messiah complex deep in his personality. And that's why he has this little religion, this little church around him of hypergamy. These guys are like enforcers, basically. The Jonathan Pigwood, the Conovan, Richard Cooper, they're enforcers for this hegemony, I think you would call it, of the Rollo pill in that toxic little wing of the Manosphere that hived off from the larger red pill community in like 2017, 2018. It's sick, and they're going to get someone killed, and Rollo's he'll do all the necessary stuff in public. Oh, I disown this. I can't believe this guy shot this school up. Oh my God, it's a tragedy. But behind the scenes, he'll be rubbing his hands together like a sick fuck, because he's going to sell more books and make more money and all this shit. It's really
there's already all kinds of problems that it has created. People email me, oh yeah, my friend like hit his girl because he was so like jaded from the red pill stuff. And
wow.
There was that school shooting in England by a guy who was pointing himself as Professor Waffles. And, it's not for sure, but he was a big wheat waffle supporter who's a current black pill voice. I made a video on wheat waffles showing this is like a 19-year-old in England that's delivering pizzas and rating everyone's face, making men not give up all hope and hate their lives and hate themselves. And what's crazy is the guy that shot people in the UK and then killed himself. He was saying that he didn't even care about his looks before any of these topics until he came across them in all the forums and watching the videos and stuff like that. And then it just sends him down this incredibly negative rabbit hole. And, there's all kinds of stuff that's not getting reported because this content goes out, in mass. These videos get shit tons of views and guys don't know any better. And so now they all, now they're hating their lives or they're hating, the fact that they don't look like a model, or they're hating women in general. And that manifests in all kinds of horrible ways across all of society. So that's why, this problem is much further reaching than just the Manosphere. These guys are.
Yeah. Well, what it is that you have damaged men trying to teach damaged men. And really what you're doing is that all you're doing when you're damaged and you don't really have any kind of sense of self, or you don't know who you are as far as your own personal identity is concerned, what ends up happening is you're just teaching these men to circle the drain. And that's why you're seeing all these people lashing out and going, the red pill has hurt me and all these different things, because they're only following the content creators that are driving them further into despair.
And now I want to talk for a moment here about more specifics, like we promised in the show, and we've done, I think, a really good job of that so far. I want to get both your takes, DDJ and John. We'll have John go first. What are your thoughts on Richard Pooper here? I'm going to pull up some videos on him as well from you.
Yeah, I mean, I made a couple videos about him. One that I aptly titled "The Butt Plugged Beta," since he made the book "The Unplugged Alpha." From what I've heard, he came into his wealth through his brother, who was running a lot of the business stuff. I attacked him, in these two videos up here. He was trying to say that I look like a fat can of smashed assholes, even though I have visible abs. A lot of these points they make are just ad hominem and not even based in reality. Like Rolo calls me the fat kid in Brazil. Like, again, I have visible abs. Like, even Jay Vincent was like, dude, you have like 13% body fat or something like that. But basically once I attacked Richard, he made this video, and that's what I covered that too. Richard Cooper quits. He was saying, he's never been like attacked publicly before, and he can't handle it. He wants to like quit the Manosphere. And he even made the statement on record in that video is he said, that he thinks the red pill is worse than blue pill, which is funny because he's been pushing red pill stuff. But yeah, I mean, he's just, I think he's just a classic hypocrite because
he's a single mom expert, right?
Yeah, he says in his book that he just got, walked on by single mom after single mom and girl, hitting the wall, this and that. He's only shown like one video with a girl ever, and the girl was clearly like, "The fuck are you doing?" kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, he made that money just because his brother's efforts in some business endeavors, and he like piggybacked on it, and it wasn't his own, his own stuff. But he's one of those guys that just thinks he's cool because he bought an expensive car and that kind of stuff. But he's, he has no game or anything like that. He doesn't know what the fuck he's doing in regards to.
Yeah, he's a huge loser with women. Yeah, I've seen him in action. I have some pictures that are pretty damning, actually. I don't know if I can share them. I don't know about the legality of that, but
I probably wouldn't.
The pictures are in my head. The pictures are in my head. I'll tell you that at minimum.
Well,
what do they look like?
The issue that I have with Rich Cooper is that he's charging like thousands of dollars for people to be a life coach. Okay,
it's $3,000 an hour now. As recently
right.
As up to 3,000,
and so
2,000.
Right, that right there is absolutely a scam, because you can go to a PhD forensic psychologist, from one of the top schools in the country and pay $250 an hour and get better assistance if you needed it than from somebody like Rich Cooper. And the other issue with Rich Cooper is that he's a meme. He's a marketing product. He's the type of guy that, because he's a bigger guy, he's got a little bit of arms, he's got the bald head, and he's got the beard to hide the weak chin.
Well, he takes testosterone too. Just saying to make that clear. He's
well,
pretty open about it, though.
Yeah, but I guess what I'm saying is that he's the type of guy that can't handle conflict very well.
Is he a transsexual? I know you've talked about that before.
I did. Yeah. I called him Needle Rick Cooper. And I showed some transsexual memes, and I was like, found Rich.
Yeah,
Cooper
he can't handle conflict. Like, I was like I think I was maybe the first person that called him out like pretty verbosely, and he went on and was like, I don't want to be in the Manosphere anymore, but he's still here.
That's a marketing technique, right? He did that.
Oh yeah.
MGTOW. So he would
RSD Tyler's been quitting for 10 years.
Yeah, he did that. I mean, he did that to the MGTOW community. He's like, MGTOW sucks, MGTOW are cowards, blah blah blah. And then 5 videos later, he's making 6 videos using actual MGTOW philosophy, right? Yep. But he's branding it as his own private red pill wisdom. And he's doing that with the Manosphere now. I'm gonna quit. Bye, Felicia. I'm gonna quit. And then he's gonna go and he's gonna plagiarize other people's content, and he's gonna pretend it's own. It's just that's the Rollo Tomasi technique.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, he's I think Cooper is definitely a fraud, but in my opinion, he's a minor fraud given the extreme nature of people that are even more aggressive. Now, I don't want to downplay the $3,000 an hour being a massive scam. I wouldn't pay him $3 an hour for advice. Ripping these guys off, being a single mom expert, pretending to be this red pill alpha male. He is the butt plugged beta. He's very beta with women. There's no pictures anywhere of him with hot women. You'll never see any pictures of him with hot women.
Yeah, to that point, really quick, that's true for like almost everyone that claims to be an expert with women. I remember Andrew Tate was like, he's like, what I find odd is these men claiming to be dating coaches and they're not even one single picture. And then I show thousands, like I have thousands, even in hookup situation, to hundreds of hours of the hidden camera infield. And then what the red pill guys will come and say is, oh, that's all fake. Those guys have zero proof. I have endless proof. And then they'll say, this is fake.
This is their proof. Beluga whales. Beluga whale. I mean, look at this. This retard is married to this.
So when I was in my 20s, I knew military guys, and because I lived in Washington State, some of those guys were in the Navy. And what they would do is you'd get about 6 or 7 of these guys. They'd get off the boat. They'd come in. And some of the guys in the Army would do this too. They had this thing called hogging. And basically what they would do is they'd all go get drunk and they'd see who could come back with the biggest pair of underwear. And it's funny. And it's funny. Right. And it's funny because that's what a lot of these wannabe dating coaches are. They're just going hogging. That's all they're doing. They're going hogging.
He loves hogging. I mean, here's him in action. We got him on the honeymoon. We got him at the wedding. We're working on a meme now, actually, where he, the pig is on the wall, like he's a hunter. You know what I mean? Like a Elmer kind of Fudd or whatever you call it. But yeah, he's a big hogger. He loves that bacon extra thick and extra aged. He likes it big and nasty, man. And if he was open about liking big and nasty women, I wouldn't be as mean. But when you lie and say that they're 10s, I mean, fuck, dude.
Like having accomplished a lot in the game for real and being able to show it all, I take offense when all these guys claim to be experts too, like anyone would in any field. Right?
You should.
Like,
yeah.
Like any real expert in a field, when someone comes in and is like, I'm an expert just like you, and they have nothing to back that up. Like imagine, it's crazy though, because in this space, since it's unregulated and you don't need to really show much, most people don't require that as a burden of proof on the creator. It's like someone is claiming to be like the best UFC fighter and there's no record of them ever fighting.
Yep.
Right. Or just
John,
a few fights where they got their ass kicked. Right?
I want to ask both of you questions specifically about Conovan Shart. So, you know, Jack Murphy is an exposed cuckold, obviously, and that's where this meme was inspired by mostly. Now, at the beginning of the show today, I showed you guys the 5-minute intro where Conovan was bragging about his wife or girlfriend or whatever, his partner, his life partner, right? Getting banged by all these dudes. She slept with a lot of guys. There's other videos where he talks about her being a rampant cheater. She's cheated on a lot of guys. She's fucked huge dicks, big old dicks. So do you view Conovan as a cuck as well as a fraud or no?
I think that he's got one-itis. And I think that you can tell, I mean, any guy who has one-itis is so insecure that they're not like the law does not allow them to say they have game, right? That's how bad it is. And so he's got one-itis so bad for this woman that you can't even say that he's looking at her through rose-colored glasses. Like he's having a delusion. And don't get me wrong. Like I understand that there are guys out there and they've got a woman they've been with for 20 years and she looks like that, you know, but when they got together with her, she wasn't like that, you know, initially. Right. But this is how he's finding them. Like I said, he's going hogging.
But is he a cuck? Because she bangs someone and he brags about.
I think he's in the neighborhood of cuckoldry. I mean, legitimate cuckoldry. I think he's in the neighborhood.
In the neighborhood, okay.
In the neighborhood, at the very least. Now, whether or not they've done anything behind the scenes, I don't know. But I'll tell you what, I'm not going to be surprised if it comes out that she pegs him at one point.
Okay, your take. Do you think he's in the neighborhood of cuckolding?
So okay, I mean, I think like he has as much cognitive dissonance about his own girl as all the followers do about his shit being true.
Okay.
You know, he has these guys. What I've realized, like, look at RSD Tyler. He borrowed that directly from Fight Club because he's the spineless fucking Edward Norton, and he wants to portray himself as Tyler Durden. He literally copied that name, Tyler Durden.
It's a Batman persona.
Where did Rollo Tomasi's name come from? That's like a tip of the hat. It was like a huge fraud scammer that he took that name from.
It's a villain, actually, a murderous villain from LA Confidential. Yeah. You're right. It's like a persona they put on, this badass villain or something. Yeah.
Yep. But you know, if you're Donovan, right, and you're acting like the man all the time on camera, you're gonna think you're the man, right? But when you measure up the objective facts about what his girl really looks like, he's not gonna go say, "Oh yeah, my chick's busted." He's gonna keep it, you know, congruent that he's the man. So she's a hard 9, all this stuff. And then he doesn't like that you show the real facts. Oh wait, no, she's not. Right? Just like Owen RSD Tyler, they used to try to copyright strike my videos when I would show like, look, here's the truth about this stuff. They usually, try to just censor you in whatever way they can so that people don't know the real facts.
Well, it's not too that she's just
falls apart.
It's not that she's just big and fat and all that stuff. It's that she's really old, which in Manosphere terms, in Donovan's own words, for years he's done, how many hundreds of podcasts and blog posts about this shit, right? Same with Rollo, who's Donovan's little daddy, right? This woman is old and nasty. And if Donovan was even older, then I wouldn't really say anything. But he's not 55 years old or 60 or 65. Donovan is younger than her, and she's older than him, on top of being fat and nasty.
Rollo's is Rollo's chick older than him too?
Yeah, by about a year. It's the same thing with Donovan. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean,
they both married.
Right?
Rollo married a post-wall woman that he bitches about on his blog and his podcast all day. Exactly like Donovan has also married a post-wall woman. At least Rollo's never lied about it. He lies by omission, in my opinion, kind of. He tries to hide it. But if you press him on this issue, if he was on the news or something, I don't think he would deny that she's older than him and that he married her when she was past the wall of 30. That's his own definition of the wall, right? At least the first wall. You got the 40 wall as well. Donovan's wife is double post wall, I call her. She's past the 30 and the 40 wall. I think she's menopausal. She's about to be 46 years old. I mean, this woman is a heffalump, is an elephant, a war pig. And to call, I mean, he's supposed to be this red pill alpha male. That's his presentation of himself, like you guys are talking about, especially you, John, with this. But his girl is old. Like that, fuck how she looks. She's fucking old. And that is the opposite of young and hot and fertile and eggs and whatever the fuck, right? Like my girlfriend's not old and fat and nasty. And if I would never date a girl who's old and fat and nasty. I would never fuck a girl who's old and fat and nasty. In fact, I've been thinking lately that we need to do an update to the whole manosphere as a community, that if you fuck a girl who's old and fat, or at least under a 5, right, below the median hotness, your leg count should go down by 1. Not stay the same, not go up. It should go down. It's negative. It's a negative.
What fascinates me, like I made a video called "The Ugly Wives and Girlfriends of Dating Coaches," and that's got like almost 100,000 views now. Everyone, some people thought it was distasteful, but I showed their girlfriends and wives, and that's the end product of their, quote unquote skills. And a lot of these girls are objectively below average, and that's not misogynistic. It's not, being an asshole. Like we have circuitry to gauge if a woman is hot or not.
Yeah.
Physically. And these girls are objectively below average, and they're claiming to be world-class gurus. And this was the final girl they ended up on.
That's important too, because if they were just some random loser working at a gas station, I wouldn't really care. It's like, all right, man.
Yeah, this isn't just a girl he had a one-night stand with.
Well,
was drunk.
The fraud though, the fraud. They don't just have a random job. They're supposed to be world-class gurus.
Right. Well, let me kind of address this too for the guys that are watching here. Nobody's saying that here's the thing. Like, obviously you want to get the hottest girl you can, but if you're in the desert,
and if that's a 4, that's okay.
Well, right.
If you're a 2,
but if you're in the desert, sometimes you got to drink some dirty water until you get back to civilization, right? but you're not gonna brag about the dirty water you drank while you were out in the desert. You had to do it. Yeah, you're not gonna marry it. You're gonna find you're basically gonna say, I had to do it to survive. I was gonna die of thirst, right? Yeah. So I drank the dirty water, and then you went back there, right? But if you're a dating coach, that doesn't apply.
Yeah.
Right. I like the analogy of if a guy, say you were at a make money online conference or just a make money conference, and a guy went up and said, here's my bank account, there's $3 in it. No, I don't have any savings or whatever, and I'm living on the streets. Okay, now let me tell you guys how to make a lot of money, and then like come follow me on YouTube and all that. That's essentially what's going on here, except this is a little secret that these guys don't have game and that these guys can't get chicks. Like just not showing proof, that doesn't make them look bad, but no one cares about that, I guess. So they just trust them about all their claims and stories, right? So it goes back to, why do most coaches not have any pictures with girls? Why do most coaches have zero proof? And then when you dig behind the scenes, here's what they're marrying. They claim they bang 9s and 10s all day, but they're marrying below average girls. That's the best they could do. And then everyone will come to their defense and say, well, that girl must have a perfect personality. Looks isn't everything. Or an even better one, hot girls aren't worth getting in relationships with or marrying. Coming from guys that have no experience dating hot girls, but just have been indoctrinated by red pill nonsense that all hot girls are terrible people.
Yeah, there's a lot of really dark propaganda they put out, man. Like it's Michael Foster, actually, the pastor, was talking about this on Tony Bruno's show about a week ago. Pat Stedman, I put out a tweet about it from his newsletter last night. But basically, these black pill guys, some of them anyway, and the red pill retards and the Rolo pill retards, whatever, they have this really negative worldview that they basically don't want to hear the truth. They get triggered. They pretend to be for the truth. And maybe in some ways they want to be for the truth, but when Michael Foster tells them, hey, man, some people are in happy, healthy marriages and they fuck all the time and the wives are hot. These guys, like, they can't fucking believe it. Like, not
I think, that bothers them because they can never have something like that.
Because they're broken and they don't want to heal. Yeah, they don't have to. Yeah, they are. They want that. They could have that in theory.
Well,
it's physically it's possible to do this, and some people do it, even if it's a dangerous landscape.
And let's be honest, right? A lot of these guys in the red pill community who hold themselves out using success porn, whether they're a red pill guy or a PUA coach or whatever, right? These are guys who have no job skills outside of making videos, right? They don't have any, like you said, it's theoretical. They're regurgitating somebody else's knowledge and somebody else's experience. They don't have that for themselves. So they're not successful in life. When they turn the video camera off and they quit recording, they're not successful in life. And because they've never been successful in life, they don't know what that looks like. And that translates into their game if they decide that they're going to talk to a woman. Because I'll tell you what, like, I'm not the most attractive dude, but I have no fear of talking to women at all. And, you know, I can slip
if I was gay, I'd fuck you.
I'm going to stay away from you for now. I was going to come out there over the summer, but I'm going to stay away from it now. So I don't want to wake up with my ass hurting. Anyway, but yeah, I mean, it's just, but my point is that if you're successful in life and you're self-confident in life and you've got that life experience, you know, that comes across in your videos. That comes across in the content you do.
Oh, yeah.
And it comes across in your results.
That's kind of the silver lining in all this. Is like I constantly get the feedback when guys watch my stuff. They're like, you seem different than the other content creators. You seem like you actually have done all this stuff. You seem like you actually know what you're talking about. And then like, surprise, surprise, I also have like endless mountains of proof for it. But since I take all these guys on, that's why I had to sue Modern Life Dating, is they retort with low below stuff. They retort with slander. They retort with making fake Reddit posts and fake screenshots, you know, and all this stuff. And then you're fighting like an unfair fight because they're playing dirty and they're just trying to like bury your reputation and discredit you so that your criticisms of their scammy businesses don't have any, you know, backing behind them anymore. But if they can just reduce you to, oh, everything's fake, you know, that's what happened to me last year. They're making fake Reddit posts that we found out there was paid campaigns, paid SEO, paid traffic campaigns to spread lies. How all my results are fake, all the girls are hookers, you know, my girlfriend's a hooker, on and on and on. And Hogwood took it to the extreme, thinking he was untouchable. And at the same time, I was getting threats over email that said, we're going to send someone to your house if you don't delete the Modern Life Dating videos.
Well, it's because Pigwood is a deranged little kid. And I know he's like 35 or something, but he's like a retarded. He reminds me of like some retard, like 12-year-old kid who's like hyper aggressive and like he's really fucked up. It's like his mother molested him when he was a kid and he stopped growing at that age or something like that. That to me seems plausible for why his personality is so fucked up. He's even more fucked up than Rolo, which is saying a lot in my opinion. I think him and Owen are probably the most fucked up guys in the Manosphere.
I've actually read studies about children of child abuse, and what they all say, you hit the nail on the head there. What they all say is that the children stop psychologically developing at the age in which they were abused. And so you'll see like 30-year-old women with like Disney clothing, right? Yep. Or you know what I'm saying? They have super childlike behavior. You're like, okay, she was probably molested when she was 8. Or you see these guys that run around and they're 45, 50 years old and they're acting like Mr. Tough Guy. And you're like, okay, that guy was probably molested when he was 12 or 14 years old. Right.
That's Donovan and that's Rolo, I think, too, to an extent.
What's going on there in that picture? That's so...
What?
I think he's showing. I think that's his Bob has bitch tits moment.
Yeah, he has boobs. He sells fitness advice. He sells fitness advice. He promotes fitness stuff, and he's a fat fuck. Like basically, yeah, it's sick.
And here's the thing too. Like I'm not trying to diminish anybody who's been abused or assaulted as a child. We can't control that. But the thing is that if you're going to perpetuate that cycle and you're not going to, break that unhealthy psychological cycle, that's a problem. But I'll tell you this right now, if you're going to break the cycle, you're not going to go to a masculine presenting life coach. You're going to go to an actual therapist. So, if you've got those issues and you're somebody out there that has those issues, go seek the professional help. Don't jerk around with some Manosphere fraud who's going to sell you telephone coaching.
Yep. All right, guys, it's been over 2 hours. I think it's time to wrap up the show. Episode 162 of the Redman Group. I appreciate both of you being on the show today, helping expose some of the more specific details of these frauds, of Manosphere fraud in general, how it kind of works and operates. I hope you guys watching have learned something from the show. Please hit like, subscribe, leave a regular comment, helps the video go viral. Share it on Twitter, Facebook, Gab, Minds, whatever. Help your friends be aware of the show. Make sure you visit missandrytoday.com to learn more about DDJ. And you can learn more about John Anthony on YouTube at John Anthony Lifestyles, or his website, as you can see, is platinumdatingsystems.com. Gentlemen, any last words on Manosphere fraud and where you want to see the community go?
I'll go first. So, I mean, we're this year. So I have like a new marketing partner that's a pretty big timer. And so, he's always talking about like the truth will set people free and all this stuff. So as we scale up efforts and reach more people, there's nothing can beat the real thing, right? Most guys that start training with my stuff get very good very fast, and that's just going to keep snowballing and snowballing. And at the same time, I'm trying to take on all the guys that are full of shit. But like I made the point earlier, I think that the cognitive dissonance shield is so strong that it's hard to penetrate, and I think that these guys just need to be attacked at the source legally. Class action lawsuits, criminal charges for the guy. There's all kinds of stuff I know that's criminal laws being broken by a lot of these guys behind the scenes, and no one holds them accountable.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not like I want, single-handedly want to go and put each guy in jail that's breaking laws. But, it seems like not many people care. Right. Because most of the industry is full of shit anyways, to some level, it seems. And like I said, it's the same in every industry. Like look at Jay Vincent. He has like a fully backed fitness system. And I said, how many, on our YouTube interview, I said, how many other creators would you recommend? He's like, just a couple. And he's like, one guy only has like 2K subs. And at that time, Jay only had like 3 or 4K subs, right? So if you're going for fitness advice, what's the odds you're going to find a guy like Jay or the other channel that he recommends, right? I had 2K subs 3 years ago. That's the problem. Is it's kind of like a diamond in the rough. Yeah. And you can't necessarily blame these guys because they just Google for help and they land on some channel and they see a big amount of subs or views. And then they think, okay, this guy must be a real expert.
Well, I think part of the problem is the average person, the average man, they kind of want the truth and they kind of don't. What they want, usually more importantly, is to their own pre-existing beliefs to be reinforced. And that's what these frauds give them, right? They might not have an articulate belief, but they're angry about women or this and that. And there might be some justification to that, but also some of it's going to be not. It's going to be them just being emotionally bitchy.
It gives them an ideology.
Yeah, to perpetuate this and to make them feel like they're right and feel like their own beliefs being reinforced.
And people want to belong to something,
Well, so, and I think to kind of add on to that too, it not only gives them an ideology, it gives them a theology because they're afraid to walk into a church or they're afraid to really, explore that. And I'm not saying that everybody needs to necessarily go to church or not go to church, but I think that, if you're feeling hopeless, it's a good option. But as far as where I see things are going, people are waking up. The normie sphere is really waking up. The red pill has gone mainstream. And I think what's going to happen is as it becomes more mainstream and as people start seeing this and you see this huge resurgence, I think, there's going to be a lot more conflict coming. But I think once it shakes itself out, I think that the manosphere is going to be a healthier place. And you're going to see a lot of guys incorporate these things into their life. And I agree in that with John, in that if you do the right thing by people, the money takes care of itself. And that's always been my experience throughout my life, and I'm going to be 52 this year. So if you take care of men the best way you can, and you take care of your community the best way you can, the money solves itself. And those people who are so desperate for money that they're charging $3,000 for life coaching, or they're selling a bunch of products at the back end of their multi-level marketing seminar.
70 of them.
Or 70 of them. Yeah. And they're selling all those things. Those people are desperate, and they're not there to help you. They're there to separate you from your money, regardless of the shit that comes out of their mouth.
They're vampires. They're vampires.
Yeah. So with that said, be aware of it. Think for yourself. Learn critical thinking. Learn deductive reasoning. And, call people out. And if you disagree with somebody in this video, call us out too. It's fine. We're men. We can handle it.
Yeah. I went on Alex and Playing Fire's channel a couple of times and just let literally random callers attack me and cross-examine me, basically interrogate me on live. It was supposed to be a debate, but a lot of these guys came on like just trying to like air feminist slander narratives or air manosphere slander narratives about me or whatever. But I kept my composure and retorted to everything and reinforced my positions and all this stuff. And I think everyone should be subject to that. Most of these guys, like Rollo, always shies away from debates. Alex has been trying forever to get.
He accuses Alex of working for me, like he's an employee of me. You too, probably. Like he thinks you guys work for me, and that's not the case. You don't work for me. You do your own fucking thing. He can't fathom that he has legitimate criticism, people who want to expose him for being a fraud, independent of me.
He knows. The funny thing is these guys know deep down that they're full of shit.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So.
But hey, I just want to wrap up the show.
Okay,
yeah. I appreciate both of you guys being on today. To pitch my own stuff, send me your money. I appreciate it. I'm going to use it to buy hookers and blow. So send me all your money. It's going to be a good time. Go to 21studios.com. You can give us your email for free, and we'll send you spam newsletters 7 days a week, or just every couple days a real newsletter. You can also go to 21studios.com, link in the description, click donate. And you can learn how to support the Redman Group, 21 Studios, 21 Convention, and our different events and the content we put out, ultimately free to the world. But it still takes money to do these things. And I appreciate you guys' support. Whether you share the video, send $10, whatever, it's appreciated. With that said, DDJ, John Anthony, appreciate your time today. Peace out. Thanks, everyone watching, appreciate your time coming out to the show and all your support for the channel. See you guys next time, probably next Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern, Saturday for the Redman Group. Adios.